This week in the security news, hacking your mattress, Taylor Swift all the time, DNS sinkholes, throwing parties at rental properties, detecting jamming. It took 18 years to hack this thing. AirTag hacks, undetectable weapons, rest in peace Skype, Cellebrite targets, upgrade all the things, Kali Raspberry Pis and M.2 hats, pirating music through a supply chain attack, Cisco small business and why you should never use it, stop hacking Russia, Badbox is back, likely it never left, and AI is still hallucinating. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Deploying enterprise AI, tools like Copilot from Microsoft 365 and Glean are prone to oversharing and data leakage. They lack the in-depth access controls required to ensure that query responses align with users' need to know boundaries. Without proper access controls, these tools accelerate the discovery of improperly secured sensitive files within the organization's M365 environment. Gnostic enables enterprises to safely adopt AI through setting need-to-know based access controls. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Gnostic and see how Gnostic can help stop AI oversharing. Coming to you from Purgatory Studios in semi-high definition, compliments of Darth Vader himself, this is Paul's Security Weekly, episode number 864, being recorded on Wednesday, March 5th. I'm, of course, Paul Sidorian, joined here in studio by Mr. Larry Pesce. What's up, man?
It's been an interesting couple of weeks. So,
yes.
But here we are.
Here we are, and we're still here, which is good.
Yep.
Mr. Josh Marpet has joined us. Josh, welcome.
Hey, how are you? Pleasure to be here, man. Sorry I'm running late.
No worries. I think your camera's frozen, Josh.
Yeah, I'm noticing that. I'll try and see if I can fix
worries.
that.
It's okay. It's actually a good look for you.
It is. Mr. Sam Bound is here with us. Sam, welcome.
Good evening. Glad to be here.
Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us.
I am here, and you can hear me. It's exciting.
It's good to have you.
What?
Mr. Lee Neely is here with us.
Hey, it's good to be here. Good to hear and see y'all, even if Josh is moving in an incredibly slow frame rate.
Right. He'll get that sorted out. While he does that, a quick announcement. Security Weekly listeners, you can save $100 on your RSA Conference 2025 full conference pass. The RSA Conference will take place, excuse me, April 28th to May 1st in San Francisco and on demand. Register using our discount code by visiting someone with a voice, securityweekly.com/RSAC25. Use the code 5U5SECWeekly. We hope to see you there.
Is that speed for sus? 5U5?
Sus. It does. Yes, it is.
Sus Sec Weekly. Wow.
Sus. We're definitely very sus. Oh boy. Hopefully
We're off
Josh
to a
gets
rip-roaring start.
We
And
are.
Josh is moving.
What's going on? Oh, it's good to have you, man.
He can give us a thumbs up, but can we hear him still?
That's right. Where do we?
I hope so.
Yep.
Okay.
So here we go. We're gonna have a vote, as it were. So IoT and hardware, fun and interesting, Linux, supply chain malware and exploits, threat landscape, breaches, or AI.
Well, why don't you give the backstory, Paula, and say that you actually organized the stories into
I did. I'm not
topics this
promising
week.
that'll happen every week.
Every week.
Because I had to do it like manually, which, as we know, is not the way we like to do things. Because automation in software is awesome,
Let's start us off fun and interesting.
fun and
For
interesting.
400.
Yes, the Proteus in Zero Day. I won't spoil it for anyone who has not watched Zero Day, but there is an article about how the NSA weapon changes everything, and it's so there. As I was watching the show, I don't know how to say this without spoiling it. So if you haven't watched the show, skip ahead like 60 seconds or so or whatever. But there is speculation that the president is experiencing neurological issues as a result of a weapon that was developed by the U.S. government. That they don't really say whether it's like radio waves or what, but that from a distance they can target someone and based on this weapon cause them to have all kinds of neurological problems. And it turns out
That's the Havana weapon. That's the
yes,
Havana
thank
effect.
you.
Yeah.
That is the real world. I was watching the show. I'm like, that sounds familiar. I think we've seen this or heard about it in
Yep,
the real world.
Right in the article, about a quarter of the way down, the psychological symptoms that Mullen experiences, including memory loss, disorientation, and auditory hallucinations draw strong parallels to the real world cases of Havana syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So that was pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's other references to that, but I also feel like I'm thinking of the CIA using LSD as a truth serum. and other
MK
such
Ultra,
things.
baby.
MK
MK Ultra.
right. Yes. So
Hi, this
that
is
was pretty
Josh
cool.
Marpet, your Conspiracy Theories Weekly.
Yes. Thank you, Josh.
Oh boy.
So anyway, I just thought it was interesting. So you should watch the 0 Day Show because it's really good. Okay. So fun and interesting. As Skype shuts down its legacy end-to-end encryption for the masses.
Yes, pretty crazy.
sad.
Skype is no more. Use Teams.
That's what Microsoft. So Microsoft
Yeah.
says, the article states Microsoft announced it'll shut down Skype on May 5th. At this point, Skype is a fringe app.
oh.
That's what they call it now. Now Skype is considered a fringe app.
Wow.
It said it had 36 million users, a far cry from its peak of 300 million users. And before you go knocking Skype, it was one of the first anyway, end-to-end encrypted messaging, voice, and video apps that debuted back in 2003. In my opinion, Microsoft dropped the ball on this one, right? They had a cool product that they bought, and it was end-to-end encrypted before like that was a thing.
Yeah.
And they focused on the crappy Teams thing instead. Skype fell by the wayside. We used Skype quite a bit here on the podcast, right? They even had a broadcaster version, Skype TX.
Yep.
Because it had the best audio codecs around.
How about
absolutely
end-to-end
it did.
encryption wasn't used in this particular medium prior to that?
Right.
It's not a new,
So
it's not a
Good
new
point.
concept.
No,
so
it's
it went
certainly
from
not a new
Link
concept,
to
right?
Skype to Teams, right?
Yeah, there's a whole history.
Yeah.
Yeah, where's Microsoft Link? You're right.
Yeah.
But Microsoft acquired Skype.
Oh yeah,
It's
no,
hanging out
I'm
with
not
Google
debating that.
Wave.
It was a good
and,
purchase on their path side.
Yeah,
really.
definitely.
It was. I wish they would have gone down the Skype path rather than the Teams path, because as we all knew, Teams is pretty crappy. And they had a Linux client for Teams, but they discontinued that a couple of years ago. Skype actually ran really well on Linux.
Yep.
But now it's
Well, that's
no
why
more.
it got canceled.
So how do you handle Teams calls on your Linux laptop? Do you have a
I just use a
Windows VM
browser.
just for that?
No, I just use a browser.
He runs a
Oh,
browser
okay.
version.
It
But
runs
that's
fine
exactly
in Chrome.
the same.
Actually runs much better now. I have, knock on wood, like less and less problems on that front.
Okay.
I probably need to try. You have to use Teams for some work stuff. We're not
Yeah.
a Teams shop, but we have to use it every once in a while for some customers. And
Mhm.
it is unusual to use on my Mac just because
Yeah.
it starts up, it uses Teams Classic, it uses the desktop app, and like I start it and like all I get is a white screen, and I have to remember every damn time I have to minimize this white screen, and then there's the thing.
Have you tried the new Teams app?
Then-
It's way better. Way better.
I have not.
I mean, they set the bar pretty low.
Well,
Is
let me put
this
it
really
way.
what we've sunk to, talking about Teams?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
isn't this a team building exercise?
Is
Oh,
Teams?
God.
But the question, bring it back to security, is Teams end-to-end encrypted?
Yes.
It's gotta be by now.
Assume it is, but
Mhm.
no, but not necessarily.
For
You just-
now.
Knowing
for
Microsoft,
now.
I would assume they have the key and they'll hand it over to law enforcement without any argument. That would be their standard policy.
Well, I know that you can pull all the chat logs. Like if you're the administrator, Teams logs everything, and you can certainly pull those logs. And there were vulnerabilities a couple of years ago where anyone could just go on in the desktop and pull all the logs. They were in clear text and accessible to the user. So that was super interesting. I mean, I guess
so not
you
end-to-end
know,
encrypted.
well, I mean, you know,
I mean, it's encrypted in transmission strongly enough. Probably not.
not
when you're
encrypted
dialing
in the logs that were stored locally. I don't know if that's a
Right.
setting, if you can change that kind of thing.
Yeah.
In the old days, we referred to it as either offline encryption, inline encryption, or online encryption.
Well, now that
Off,
rocks
in,
are
and
not young
online?
anymore and rocks aren't soft and dirt isn't young, we refer to it as at rest, in transit, and in use.
Whereas
Um,
PCI calls it, transmitting, processing, or storing.
then
I
there's
looked it up. Microsoft's official statement is, if you don't enable end-to-end encryption, Teams still secures a call using encryption based on industry standards.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All righty.
TLS.
Which
Was that-
industry? Buggy
Would
whips
that
and
be
horse.
imagined encryption or implied encryption?
It means it's not turned on unless you turn it on, and
Wait,
only
wait,
for
wait.
one-on-one if
I
you do
can
that.
make Jeff cringe. It's proprietary encryption.
Oh,
Or is it Canadian encryption?
Oh God, symmetric, asymmetric,
Symmetric,
symmetric
asymmetric, or
A.
symmetric.
symmetric A.
You
encryption.
know-
That's the best kind.
Yeah.
If Jeff takes you out and
There's a
hurts you, we're
25%
going to back
tariff
him
on it,
up.
though.
That's right. That symmetric A encryption comes with a 25% tariff now.
Now you're going
Oh,
to make me
goodness.
launch Teams and look
All
for
right.
the configuration.
How do we dig
setting.
out of the hole?
Cellbrite zero-day exploit was used to target a phone of a Serbian student activist. What I heard is Cellebrite was like, "Oh no, we didn't mean to sell it to them. Like we need to revoke their license right away."
Oh God.
That's not quite the way I heard it. I do hear they revoked the license, but they had when they bought it, they passed the criteria, but then they didn't
Right.
follow the ULA, so they just
The
agreed to-
criteria was they had a check that cleared.
I
Oh.
wasn't going there. But Amnesty International did a nice deep dive onto what was done to this guy's phone, in which the Serbian police said they didn't access it. Yeah, right. And so it's a really good analysis of what was done. And they did use a USB driver 0-day to get into it, which I thought was kind of cool. I mean, they definitely did. They had to work for it. And in it was only the February 25 release of Android that addressed that particular vulnerability. And
In
then
the
there are
drivers for USB devices, right? They were talking about this in the 3 Buddy Problem podcast I was listening to this morning, and they said that the Android, I'm assuming iOS too, but specifically Android, I'm a little more familiar with in this context, especially that you can plug USB devices in, and it goes, oh, like I have a driver for that because there's like a Linux kernel behind the scenes. And what Constantine from that podcast was suggesting is that be an option. Like users should be able to enable like USB driver support, because like most of their point was like 99% of the people out there don't use that feature. It's like a 1% feature that mostly like us hackers use when we want to plug stuff in to our Android phones and have it
shouldn't that
interact
default
with
be
it or
off?
yeah, so
Right.
it should default to off. There also needs to be a lockdown mode for Android, which I don't believe there is
Yeah, that
today.
should
I
be
think
the
the Graphene people have created one for their
Yeah.
project. Is what they said on the podcast. It was
They-
pretty interesting.
Yeah, because
Yeah, I need to go through and do a tech segment on graphene and like for beginners. How do you do it? How do you install it? What do you do to make it secure? That would be nice. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
Right.
and it depends on which phone you have too.
Well, and there's also
Some are
issues-
easier than others.
Yeah, there's also an issue about these being memory safe drivers, and there's actually updates en route from the Linux kernel development that haven't yet made it to the Android that
Yeah.
shore up the memory safe driver problem.
They rewrote them in Rust.
I didn't say that. I thought it really loud. I'm glad you heard me.
You thought it so loud it came out of Paul's mouth.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, where was I did I put that story in about that somebody actually a group of folks produced guidance? Oh, it's my number 2, I think
Yeah.
it is on memory safe coding. It's not just rewrite everything in Rust, because it might actually be impractical to rewrite your code in a new your application in a new language. How about that? Shocking.
Well, I mean, I could probably sum up their paper like if you know what you're doing, C is memory safe.
Yeah. Well, it
But then it reaches a level of complexity that
Mhm.
it's just easy to make a mistake, as we've seen with so many lines of code, right? In C especially.
I'm just saying that Rust makes it easier to get it right.
Raise your hand if you're old enough to
dis-
remember when everything was getting converted to C.
Right.
Yeah.
From what are we converting from?
COBOL, Ada,
COBOL?
I was gonna say
From B.
from
Imp.
Fortran.
If we went back to COBOL, I don't think we'd have any of these problems.
Our code would be a lot smaller.
Here.
No, it didn't. Sam, we just have people 150 years old collecting Social Security. That's all.
We already
I
did.
heard, but I heard that was because of COBOL. Because if
was.
they don't know someone's birth date, it defaults to the earliest date.
The epoch
in
time.
that
It's an epoch time
epoch
issue.
time that
COBOL
COBOL
epoch.
recognizes something 1870 or something like that.
No, it's not. COBOL has no date field at all. So it's whatever developer decided to put in like a 2-digit integer for date or something. That's the issue.
I see.
Because
I
the
see.
epic is 1970.
That's
Right.
the Unix epoch.
The
Yeah.
Unix
epic,
epoch.
but the let's see what's the
Yeah, that's the default
no-
Unix epoch.
what's the VM?
Right.
And I don't mean
It's 2037, I believe.
Yeah.
When the Unix clock runs out.
okay.
Oh,
That's the 30.
right.
That's the 32-bit problem, right?
I think so. Is that that is the 32-bit problem? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the unsigned. Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Date fields suck. If you've ever done any programming had to deal with dates, it sucks.
Oh, who here had to deal with Y2K?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
My hands up.
Yep.
Date fields suck. I can agree with you
Yeah.
entirely.
You know what really sucks is daylight savings time. Holy crap. Some places don't have it. Some places have it on the half hour.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
There's some places that have it on the 45-minute offset.
No, are there really?
I've never
Yes.
seen that.
Yes.
Seriously?
Man,
I don't
it
remember
exists
where,
to
but
drive
there
us
are.
insane.
Yeah.
This is why I decided not to be a programmer full time. At least one reason.
Oh, and don't forget leap seconds.
Yeah. I remember when I started in finance, the boss said, give it an interest rate of 8% per year. So I took the number of days and divided by 365.24, which is the correct length of the year. And he said, no, you can't do that. You have to divide by 365 on 3 years, then 366 on next year, because that's what a legal year is. I said, well,
Wow.
Wow.
Maybe that wasn't for you.
my first thought was astronomy. I know what for astronomy, I know what a year is, but anyway.
Oh yeah.
On my project
with
list
you.
is to
year
build a tier 1
365 and a
NTP
quarter.
receiver. I'm sorry, Lee. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I agree with Sam. A year is
Meanwhile,
365
back
and a
at
quarter
Microsoft
days long.
Teams, I did find their support page
0.24.
says that they
Oh, excuse me.
use
Well,
yeah,
TLS.
that
A
extra
quarter
leap
minus
day.
a smidge.
You have that missing leap day every 100 years or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
A
I like how we
smidge.
were talking about Skype, and Jeff was like, "We're getting off the rails," but now we're talking about dates and time.
And we're not off the
We're
rails,
not
yes.
off the rails. We're totally
Okay.
fine.
Yeah.
Oh
And
wait,
who
it makes
has a
more sense
plan-
because Jeff is frozen. So
Yep. So
Who
let's
here
keep
has a
going.
plan to build a tier 1 NTP receiver? It's on your list of projects they want to do.
no,
Go.
that is not on my list of
And
projects.
now let me clarify here, Mr. Marpet. Tier 1 is via GPS. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
What do you mean plans? What's to say that I haven't already built one?
Oh, yes.
What do you mean
built,
plans, Grasshopper?
Yeah, I've actually built multiple. This was back when I was at InGuardians doing some of the time-based, as we so affectionately called it, time-based fuckery via GPS and software-defined radio.
Yeah, I don't have time for these kind of projects. Anyway,
I
I
thought
see what you did
I
there.
thought the word that the phrase that Josh was looking for was Stratum 1 NTP clock.
Yes.
Yeah, you're actually
Yes.
correct. That is
Stratum.
correct. I couldn't think of the word. Thank you.
yes,
See, Paul, if you had one of these projects, you could have all the time in the world.
that's right.
Yes.
I could.
Yeah.
I
dear
want to
Lord
talk
God.
since we're talking about software. Let's pivot to software supply chain. Because this one is also, I think, fun and interesting because someone built a supply chain attack into a Python library whose sole purpose was to pirate music from the online streaming service Deezer. So the Python library uses.
Wait, what story is this?
Uh,
See, this is why I don't like this. What
this is
story?
why I don't like this too. Yep. What story was it?
Wait,
It's
it was
in-
your
it's in
it was
here
your pirating
somewhere.
movie. Oh, number 29. Your
Yeah.
package with 100K installs.
Yeah, 100,000 installs. It had hard-coded credentials to Deezer and would just go out and I don't know how they actually retrieved the files, but it would pull it down to the user system. I didn't get to the part where how whoever executed the attack actually retrieved the files.
I mean,
But
what
they
good
said
is
there's
it?
a
Only has
ton
90
of
million tracks.
music on this platform too. Something like 90 million songs.
Is that all? Man.
That's all.
That's just nuts.
Well, in podcasts too.
Deezer.
So wait.
nuts.
What?
I think all our podcasts are on Deezer as well.
Nobody caught my joke. Huh?
So
No, I did. I missed it. We were
it's-
talking over each
Yeah,
other.
Sorry.
We have
This
tension.
story is nuts. These are
Oh.
nuts.
Oh yeah, 180
I'm-
countries, access to over 90 million tracks, playlists, and podcasts.
Oh, okay. I was trying to think that if this was actually what this package is for. It's not. It's not like
No.
a package that does something else and it maliciously does this in the background. This is what this is for.
Auto MSLC.
Yeah.
I don't know what that does. The article didn't really. Well, now if I
But it
Google
may
for
be
that, all I get
that's
is a
its
malicious.
sole
Oh,
purpose.
there it is. Yeah.
Does that tell me what it is?
Yeah, it uses to
it?
bypass Deezer API restrictions.
Bypass
Oh,
these
okay.
nuts.
It's right there. When using the project to bypass Deezer API restriction, the project actual data used to a hard code. Oh, maybe that's an advisory.
No, that's an advisory.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
bypasses the 30-second preview.
I think they
for
pulled
podcast.
the.
Oh,
did they
okay.
pull the
Yeah,
package. They
yeah.
might have pulled the package.
Oh, and it's using the internal API calls instead of the. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
It's
if you
using the
Google for
private
it,
API.
It's a.
Oh, this is clever. Not typically legal, but it's clever.
Right? I mean, just when you thought piracy was dead, I mean, maybe piracy will never die, but
No.
No.
I mean,
Um,
music pirate. I mean,
As long as there's water, there'll be pirates.
Nay,
Arr.
Well, does this make this so much water under the bridge?
I suppose so. What do you say we pick a different topic?
Actually, yeah, okay, but I thought that is really neat. I
It's
mean,
neat, though, right?
Well, we're
Yeah.
talking about music.
Yeah. What
The,
do you-
Oh,
the
yeah.
Tailораtor.
Yeah. So let's go to that's in IoT and hardware, where we have a bunch of stories in there.
It's all right.
Okay,
and
let's start.
Larry-
going through some.
Larry had like one of the best stories, and I didn't have to really read much into it to realize that it was just awesome.
Yep.
So Larry, I'll let you.
Yeah, so it's a software-defined radio project, and it looks like in this particular case, they're using the Lime SDR Mini, which is super awesome, super highly capable, super cheap, and can transmit. Lime, when they started developing their SDRs were intended to be full duplex, inexpensive, and quite robust because they were using them for providing cellular service in destitute, low income, third world, that type of
see.
stuff.
Because SDRs like have come from all different sorts of hardware that weren't intended to be SDRs, but it's essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, electronics and hardware that can transmit on a or listen or transmit on a frequency.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Like it was the TV tuners.
Yep, that's the RTL SDR.
Yeah.
Was what
Cable
came
TV
from
tuners.
digital TVB broadcast
Mhm.
in Europe. Turns out they had way more capability than what they were being used for.
Right.
I mean, should Rick Astley sue for infringement on his space there? You know.
Well, I think it all just
Yeah.
is a matter of changing the music. That's a good one.
But
Yeah, I'm
actually,
sure
no,
you
it's-
could. I mean, it basically, what does it do? Fill every FM broadcast channel with Taylor Swift's music? Is that?
Yep, pretty much.
Okay.
Yep, pretty much. And you could also do different songs on each one of the in each one of the channels.
So are you
so
transmit-
100 different frequencies, and in this case, 100 different songs
Mhm.
on the odd numbered frequencies in the FM.
Oh, I see.
broadcast
So it's a
range.
different Taylor Swift song on
On
every
every
channel.
channel, yeah.
I like that. So you just got to tune the one that you like, and then you can listen to that song over and over again. Does it run on a loop?
So
Yep.
That's great.
how is your SDR actually able to do that? In other words, it's transmitting on all the channels something different?
Yep.
I
Yep,
would
if
think
you, I mean, if you have a capable enough software-defined radio that can do enough megahertz wide, yeah, absolutely, it can. It just
Mega hurts my ears. But
it requires some fairly decent processing power on the back end on the computer side. I think he was
I see,
saying
yeah,
it
yeah,
is
yeah.
not
Yeah.
going to be something you're going to do on like a Raspberry Pi.
Mhm.
No.
He's using a 10th gen i5 CPU for the entire
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
for
For
the
the rig,
entire
yeah.
frequency range, he can only get about half time performance.
But I'm thinking about the actual RF transmitter chip.
Yeah, if your RF transmitter chip has enough bandwidth, then absolutely it can.
Okay.
Yep.
Whoa. My brain is just exploding over here. This is really neat. I mean,
But now you're not supposed to do this, right?
when,
Well, so
Is that-
that's
There are
depends.
channels where you can
So-
in the FM and AM bands, right?
so technically, if you've ever used back in the day, right? And we still have a car that is old enough that you can't listen to your phone in the car because the car doesn't have Bluetooth and any of that type of stuff. You
Yeah.
use a little FM transmitter, low power FM transmitter, and there's a
power
it's like
restriction.
yep, there's a power restriction, and these will
It's
probably
under
very easily
1 watt to do an FM transmitter,
I think it's
and that's
even under
for
that.
churches actually.
It's
Churches use 1 watt. Sorry, go
and
ahead.
you can do a lot, and it's a lot less for some of those car like
Oh, the car ones
FM
are a
transmitters.
fraction of a watt.
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
Right.
It's
It's
the
got
same thing
2
with your
feet.
whole house FM transmitter.
Yep.
Although
So
I've seen
fraction
some
of a
that
watt.
sell
Well,
for
the
5
drive-in
watts, but
drive-in movie theater.
yeah, same thing. Same thing.
Is an
That's
application for
I
that.
actually am. I bought, or I don't know if I bought it. I planned on buying a church transmitter because I bought for conferences a 20-foot inflatable movie screen and a big old projector. And for conferences that we give for people to talk when we go, because we're holding conferences in parks for a while there.
Mhm. Yep.
And I had to look it up, and it's for churches and for drive-in movie theaters. They allow 1 watt because it's not allowed to go farther than your property line plus 100 feet or something.
Right.
And on select FM bands, is that true?
You
I
you
thought
have
that
to be
you had to.
on a band that's not being used, basically.
Right. Right.
That's actually
It's
a
a Part
technical
15
limitation.
thing.
It's because like any other transmitter is going to be a hell of a lot more powerful than you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I gotcha.
So it's just easier to use one that's not being used. So just
Well,
find
and
it off
also if you
frequency and
don't
use it.
step on somebody else's if you step on somebody else's frequency, they're likely to get upset with you.
And arguably, you can do it on ones that are in use. And in fact, we use one in kids' car now. That it very much will we tune it to a frequency that is already in use by another radio station because of the proximity. The one in the car is actually more
yeah.
powerful, stronger than the one actually in Providence that it may be interacting with.
Right.
Right.
So the questions about legality, and they're like, oh yeah, no, it's probably illegal, and I'd argue probably not, given that the output is going to be within those ranges of those small transmitters.
Yeah.
For
That
your
I would
car.
argue, I would agree with you. I am more concerned because I use one of those transmitters for my Christmas light show. The music is on an FM band, and if it's not if it's a used frequency, people have trouble tuning it in because it isn't the strongest transmitter on the block.
Yep.
Or in the area, and it is a legal one. Although the range is only about a half a mile, it's still under the legal limit.
Yep.
Well, it's outdoors. It's got a long wire antenna. So, but it is cool. I mean, I'm like thinking about my what was that? That class you taught in that really cool hardware kit you assembled, Larry, that has an SDR in it.
The question will be which one, right? Because the SEC 617 you get software defined radio that's receive only. In the IoT class, you get a Hacker F, which is transmit
yes,
capable.
It's the IoT. Oh,
yeah. The IoT class is fun for something like that. And of course, it's open source, so you can do this yourself. Yeah. He apparently doesn't include the Taylor Swift songs. You've got to provide your own, I'm assuming. Yeah, no.
Well, that would definitely be illegal.
Yes.
correct.
Correct.
All right. What about hacking mattresses? I love this one too. Unhacked mattresses.
that's the one.
phoning home. That's the one.
Yeah,
Hacker
that's
F.
the one.
Mind
the
you, I
official
grabbed the
box
bag
and everything.
sideways, and now I have a floor full of cool stuff. But
Nice. Yeah, so apparently, what was it? I don't remember the name of the company. 8 something or other. The story open here.
It's a $2,000 mattress.
Yes, $2,000 mattress.
Removing Jeff Bezos from my bed is the name of the article, which is great.
Crap, where did this one go here?
And there's a back door in the bed.
Jeez.
That's just phrasing.
Phrasing?
Anyone?
Right.
Yep.
So you buy a $2,000 mattress.
From 8
There's
Sleep.
a back door in the bed. 8 Sleep can access your mattress remotely, is what they figured out.
Yep, because there's some hard coded where was it? Amazon keys and some hard coded usernames and passwords that were usable via SSH. Yeah.
They have fucking subscriptions for the mattress?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what he said. You had to pay
$19 a month.
$19 a month for anything beyond basic features. How about that for a business model?
Like,
What
what
the
kind of
flying-
features does your mattress need?
Well, one might
oral
argue, does
sex?
it need internet access to begin with? But
I thought fridges with internet access were insane. Mattresses with internet access? Like, do you really want to be in the middle of doing the deed and have the little voice come up? We're watching you. Like,
But it sounds like the mattress controls temperature. Is that true?
Yeah, it looks like it controls temperature for sure.
There's a chiller warmer on it, so
I
like
need
all
internet
things
connectivity
like
for
this.
that?
Yeah, because
So-
now I want to go to bed. I know I'm going to bed in an hour, but I want it to be at the right temperature when I get into bed. So I want to go on my smartphone and I want to set the temperature so it can come up or down to temperature before I get in the bed. That's the use case. I'm not saying it's a great one. I'm just saying that's probably the use case.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a
Amazon
chiller.
set dad's bed to 0 degrees.
Right.
and you don't keep it warm all the time, presumably because you want to save money.
Well,
And,
and I
how
think
much
it's,
money you think you're saving?
and I
'Cause
think it's
$19 a month.
Right.
$19 a month.
And I think it's not so much that it's warm; it's that it's cool. Because
Yeah.
he talks about using an aquarium chiller.
Hmm.
Like, to me, this the concept of a chilled bed kind of baffles me, and I get that, like, oh, people put on pajamas and like all these comforters and all this stuff, so they get in and they're in this nice warm bed, but they're too hot, so you need to chill the mattress down a little bit so you're cool and
take
you're
a
at the right
damn
temperature.
blanket off.
And don't pay. That doesn't cost $19 a month and $2,000, right? Yeah, take a blanket off.
Wait a minute. I have to hire a guy to stand there and hold it out if I case I want
Oh.
to. Never mind.
So what did he do? So he replaced the smart mechanism with an aquarium chiller?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah, I see what he's doing now.
he just bought a cover, the mattress cover that has the cooling tubes in it
Mm-hmm.
from eBay, and then attached it to an aquarium chiller instead. It does the same goddamn thing.
Right.
And it probably doesn't
Not-
cost $19 a bloody month, for God's sakes.
Nope. But you know what's even cheaper than that? Take off a blanket and sleep in the nude. Like,
Yeah.
Like a normal person.
Now, here's a novel idea. If the bedroom's too hot, open a window.
Yep.
turn
Do
the
that too.
temperature or turn the thermostat down.
Yes.
Lots of
Turn
ways
the
to solve
ceiling
this
fan
problem.
on. Ceiling fans are
But the
God's
what's the
thermostat
as far as I'm
is
concerned.
also internet connected, so you can do that from your phone at least, and you don't have to get out of bed.
Why the hell do they need an SSH account for a mattress? I mean,
Security.
yeah.
Just, like, for the videos?
Troubleshooting?
I don't know.
Troubleshooting.
For the audio tapes?
I don't. Is there? I don't think there was audio or video on the
Yeah.
device.
Please
Why-
provide
why-
your credit
why do you need
card
access?
number for more comfort.
Yeah, why do they need access? So they can perform updates. Seriously, that was arguably one of the reasons why there's a.
Did they hard coded an SSH key in there?
Yep.
Let's provide
Mhm.
updates.
Yep.
Again,
Does the
this is like-
mattress have an auto destruct sequence to preserve your
Yeah.
secrets?
but this
Of
is like
course.
this is similar to the CMS 8000 or whatever Contact 8000 patient monitor, where it's not really a backdoor; it's just really poor coding and bad
Yeah.
design.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do
Yeah.
To cool your fleshlight? I mean, like, come on. What's the...
you remember
Oh,
the
there's
days
another
when
$1
you
million idea, Josh. A fleshlight
come up-
color.
Josh, 2 minutes into the penalty box you go.
Oh,
Thank you, Jeff.
And you got to leave your flashlight out
Thank
here.
you, Jeff.
You gotta leave your flashlight here.
Somebody give him a yellow card.
yes.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. So I-
Josh has been warned.
But, you know,
Josh
in all
couldn't get over
fairness,
the mattress
where else
story.
were we going to go with a story about a smart mattress?
That's true.
Well, I mean, come on. We've done stories about smart butt plugs before. We can...
we have. We have.
Yeah, but at least
we need
knew it was
Renderman
coming.
back on the show.
Yeah.
I miss him.
ThreatLocker implements a least privilege approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, and zero-day exploits, and ensures protection for your organization 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with respected compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. There's a lot of smart stuff that's being built and hacked. Someone turned their ESP32 into a DNS sinkhole to fight doom scrolling. Now, if you're into ESP32 development or you want to get into ESP32 development, go read this post. For that reason alone, it's worth, like, I learned some stuff reading the post. I'm like, it's great. He puts code examples, explains all the code examples. Fantastic. However, if I were to solve this problem of having a DNS sinkhole, I likely wouldn't solve it with an ESP32 in this manner. I mean, it's cool to do it this way, but there's an open source project called Pi-hole that is way, way better. It was originally intended to run on a Raspberry Pi. However, I recently set up 2 Pi-hole servers for like a total of $12 a month, and that includes one being backed up. I think they're $5 a month each. They're the smallest nano cloud server you can buy, and it was $2 a month for backups of just one of them, because I don't really need to back up both. And then you
If
get all
it's
the
so
benefits.
small, does it float higher in the air? In
It
the
does.
cloud?
Yeah, it's very
Okay.
it's very light, airy, fluffy, cloudy.
Gotcha.
So you get all the benefits of Pi-hole. So different block lists. I can configure, a bunch of block lists. I even configured mine to query the root DNS with Unbound. So I don't have to use a Cloudflare or Google DNS server, because that just gives me the heebie-jeebies, basically. Some will claim querying the root is slower. I haven't noticed any issues. Don't forget to apply some firewall rules, right? Because in the cloud, you can either use your cloud provider, or I used IP tables to apply firewall rules. I also configured Tailscale on it to put it on the VPN. I'm still doing some work there to figure those things out. But to me, that, like, then I don't have to worry about the hardware and power, and is it going to fail? Is someone going to trip over a plug, kind of thing. Like, I put them in the cloud.
Stupid boomer question time. What makes it a cloud server and not just a server?
Because it's in the cloud.
That's just what we call it. I don't know, that's what they call it.
That's just the marketing.
Someone else's server, we call it the cloud, because it's. I don't
But
know.
you're talking about buying it, then you just give it away. I don't understand.
Buying what?
The cloud
I
server.
missed
Because he
something.
gets to
Oh,
use the word cloud.
Technically, I'm renting, Jeff.
You're
not
renting
buying.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind
somebody
of like
else
a beer. It's
owns
only
it.
rented.
The only time we buy cloud servers is when they've been decommissioned and they're out on the eBay or something.
It's a great point.
And you want 17 racks worth of hardware.
Right. But for $12 a month, I'll do that rather than have the headache of, having something local.
It's
You gotta be a
better
little more
investment than $19 to have
Right?
that mattress.
Yeah,
Right.
And then you
Cold.
could Pi-hole the mattress.
There you go.
You should definitely Pi-hole your mattress.
Yeah, that
You
only,
should.
That only costs $31 a month.
Because you can sinkhole all the domain. I mean, you can do ad blocking. Right.
The warm sinkhole of the mattress.
I
think
hate
it's-
waiting to go to sleep until the ads finish.
I know.
See,
Can you imagine lying in bed and you have to listen to ads before you can go to sleep? Right. That's where we're going with this stuff.
because
Oh, wait.
you know what the ads are going to be, Paul, right? Butt drugs.
Butt drugs. That's an inside joke. Someone sent a video.
Call
about-
1-900 to have a companion in your warm bed now.
Oh my God, Josh, you're off the rails tonight.
Call
You
us
know, they're gonna
now for
determine-
male and female enhancement procedures.
But here's the thing. They're going to determine there's only one person in the bed. There's typically 2, but over the last 2 weeks, average of only 1 person. They're going to throw the 1-900 commercials up on the ceiling or whatever. I mean, think about the use of this data to determine when you're lonely.
You know what this feature reminds me of? Idiocracy.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
Go away,
Yeah.
Baton.
Yep. So I don't know. Just moving right along now.
That's me.
I was building. So there's a tutorial on how to build a portable Kali box with a Raspberry Pi and a touch screen. I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm on the fence about a lot of these projects that are putting Kali on all these different devices. I don't find them very usable or practical. A lot of these projects, right, where you have the Kali phone, you get the whatever that's called. I can't
Remember
think
the
of it. I
Pwn
built
phone?
one. Yeah, there was a phone, but now you can put Kali in. Net Hunter is the Kali that goes on your phone, and I've done that, and like I get it all installed, and I'm like, well, that's nice. Now I have to use Kali on my phone, and wow, that really stinks. So then I'm like, I'm going to put it on a Raspberry Pi and put a touch screen on it, and I'm like, well, that's great. Now I have a 4-inch screen.
Yeah,
that
Just
I have to
like
run
you had on
Kali
your
on.
phone. It was
Yeah.
the usability was the problem. The
So can you
functionality
run-
wasn't the problem. It was the
So can you
usability.
run Kali on your butt plug?
Probably is Kali like the new Doom? I think someone was there was
yes. I saw that.
something about that. We need a new Doom because Doom has been played out.
because you can run Doom on
Yeah.
every.
You can run Doom on everything, so let's find something else to run. Maybe it's Kali Linux. So I was trying to put
Unreal Tournament.
I was trying to put Kali Linux on this Raspberry Pi 5 that I put an M.2 hat with an NVMe, and I 3D printed my own case. I thought it was doing great, but it doesn't recognize the M.2 NVMe. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Also, there's a lot of like tinkering involved getting this stuff working because I want to put a cooler on it, but then I got to put the risers to get the M.2 hat to go over the cooler. And then if I wanted to put a screen on top of that, it's going to raise this up. So I got to find a new 3D print that also has a cutout for a screen. But I really like this case.
6-inch tall stack of components.
Yep. Right.
At that
so I'm
point,
like, I don't know if I want a screen. I just want to stick with this case, get a cooler on it. I don't know if it's going to, I might be able to put a cooler on this and it would be fine with the risers on it. It might be able to still use this case and put Kali on it. But then my thing is I want to connect it to the Electro, what is that laptop thing called?
Yep.
Electro laptop for Raspberry Pis.
Yep.
But then it's not going to fit. If it's in the case, it's not going to fit in the cradle or whatever they call the adapter for that. So I got to do some cables. But then I can have a keyboard and screen, proper size keyboard and screen to run Kali Linux on, or I can connect to it remotely and use the terminal, which is
what works really well? A Mac Mini.
A laptop. Yeah.
Or a laptop, yes. A Mac Mini, a laptop, a
No.
NUC.
Oh, even better. No,
I had a story.
The framework desktop.
Yes.
Did you see that?
No.
Wait, what?
Wait,
they have a framework
has a desktop
now?
Yeah, Framework has a quote a Mac Mini killer.
Oh, interesting.
Really?
Yeah, they just released it like a week ago.
No.
Yeah.
So, how about we go the other way? Like, those old netbooks that were Intel Atom based?
I had one of those.
I wonder if they got enough horsepower to run Kali.
I mean, we used to run Kali on those back in the day.
It just comes down to like what's practical. Like I've experimented with a lot of this gear. I think you're better off with a 13-inch laptop.
Yep.
Oh,
right? I mean,
yeah. And the
13
13-inch laptop could weigh like a pound and a half, or it'd be almost lighter than your Raspberry Pi will be when you get all the other stuff done with half the headache.
Because I have a PC that has a screen built into it that I put Kali on. I was like, well, that's cute too. And then I kind of just move on because it's like you got to interact with them.
Yep.
I just need to spend some more time with it.
This is the same sort of thing that I was running into, Paul. I ran into this story, and I haven't finished watching the YouTube video. It's like it's quoted as the world's best SDR, and it's a Raspberry Pi with like a 5-inch screen.
Yep.
That it boots up and it does everything right there, but it's a touch screen. But it's a 5-inch screen. Like, I'm old. I need more, and my fingers are fat. Like, I need more screen real estate than 5 inches.
If it's purpose built, like the cheap old displays have the touch screen with the stylus, but they're very purpose built, so you just have a very simple menu.
Yep.
But like when I'm using Kali, like I want to run I want to run Kismet on it. That requires some typing and like interacting with a web browser and an interface. I'm like,
so
you mean you want to use 10 fingers instead of 2 thumbs?
Yeah. Well, I guess once I got Kismet on it, I could connect remotely to the web service because I'm sure you could.
But then, kind of, what's the point? Like now you have 2 devices.
13-inch laptop is what I come. But I have to say, it is fun building this stuff.
Oh, don't get me
I do a lot of fun building it.
Yep.
I just like practical usage. I'm like,
and that was the other one that I was coming to. I'm like, well, I need a bigger screen. Where am I going to get a bigger screen? And about the same time on Hackaday, it was someone repurposing an old iPad screen.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
or you can just buy a laptop.
Or
yes,
I mean, it's a whole stack of laptops sitting over there somewhere, right?
I have a stack of laptops at home already.
Yeah.
Well, remember the movie WALL-E where you use the big magnifier on top of the iPod screen?
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. This is true.
It just reminds me of the whole evolution of, let's say, personal devices. Over time, they just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And then they just started getting bigger and bigger and bigger again because everybody was aging and needed a bigger screen.
You need a bigger screen.
Yep.
Oh, I also had an SDR analyzer really quick. This is an RTL SDR analyzer that is tuned to, here is my story number 26, to detect jamming.
Ooh, what?
Yeah. And so you need Python, RTL, SDR hardware, and an RTL TCP server, and then there's software that will detect jamming. Yeah. And so I thought it'd be neat to get this running, and then do some jamming attacks on the Flipper Zero or ESP32 firmware, and see if it detects it, and take it to a conference and see what I can find. So I flagged that one. I thought that was interesting as
That'd
well.
be neat.
Right? It's pretty cool.
Yeah. But don't get me wrong. Jamming is illegal.
It is.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Larry. I meant to
So
say that.
yes, we wanted to see other people's jamming attacks. I also think this is kind of fascinating. Now that I'm reading through this, is that it would be interesting if we could figure out if we could make it wider in its detection capabilities using a different RTL-SDR, say the entire FM radio band.
Right.
And it looks like you can set thresholds for the signal strength. Like, so back in the day when Faith and I put together Vapor Trail,
Yep.
we used low power FM radio to do data exfiltration with a Raspberry Pi and an RTL SDR, because it was in a frequency range that no one is doing detection for signals. So you could effectively use something like this to say, hey, what happens when a new FM radio starts transmitting in my environment? Send an alert because something has changed.
I think that's where we were pushing Pony Express to go.
Yeah.
Remember, we're like, you do a great job with Wi-Fi, but it'd be cool to detect all these other transmissions that like no one else is looking at. And then the company just went by the wayside.
Well,
folded,
Russ did it though. Russ did that.
I think they did eventually add that, right?
No.
They had
Russ
a bunch
did
of
this.
new
Russ
capabilities.
Handorf.
Oh, okay.
Russ did that
SQ.
with Soho SIGINT, Small Office, Home Office Signals Intelligence, which eventually got folded into Kismet by Dragorn. So in Kismet right now, there's, as I understand it, although I'd have to double check, there is the capability to do the signals intelligence of whatever your system can detect. If you're using an RTL SDR or a Lime or a whatever, it can tell you if something has changed and if something is coming near your house or wherever you've got this system deployed.
I have not heard of this in Kismet. Now I need to. Josh, if you got a link,
I need to spend some time with
searching for
Kismet.
Kismet
I need to
capabilities,
finish up
aren't
the Cali project. I need to get Kismet on it, and I need to spend some more time. With Kismet.
You need to throw some Bluetooth adapters and
it does Bluetooth. It does
some RTL SDRs at it.
Yes,
multiple of them.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, are we gonna smoke some cocktails? Do you want to smoke the ice in your glass before you?
I'm good for right now. You do yours first, and then we'll.
You do you. I'm gonna do me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna see if this works. This is like an experiment. I
You
brought my cocktail smokers
did
to
you
the
put fuel?
studio.
Did you put fuel in that?
I did.
You're a
did.
what
Holy
smoker?
crap.
Cocktail.
Bluetooth,
Josh,
And for the
your
audio-
mind is
audio
Josh's mind is
Listeners, Paul's about to blow himself up.
in the gutter.
Holy cow.
In the gutter. That smells
Larry, when you get
delicious.
back to your desk, check Slack.
I'm at my desk.
All
That's
right.
the
So we all
project.
agree we're going to spend more time with Kismet, Kali Linux, and that kind of stuff, and SDRs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I have anything else along those lines? Oh, so hacking the Xbox 360.
All right.
I just want to point out that Microsoft released the Xbox 360 a little over 18 years ago.
No way.
Just recently, like last month, someone figured out how to do what I believe is the first like software only rooting of an Xbox 360.
That's
all hacks
crazy.
previous to that required some hardware modification or interaction. This is doing it similar to the original Xbox, where there's I believe this article talks about chaining an exploit that's in a game. So a game has a buffer overflow exploit, talking about memory management.
Yep.
And then that's a pivot point to then use us to bypass the hypervisor technology that they put in the Xbox 360 to then gain root access and run the code of your choosing on that system. There's a 2-part article series in this blog that is just absolutely astonishing. The work that was put in. I mean, months of research and testing. The author describes like just reaching brick walls and going, I don't know what to do next, and having to really think about what to try next, and ended up doing it, which is pretty amazing. I was just about to get rid of my Xbox 360 too.
I think I got rid of mine years ago.
No, and keep it around and see where this goes.
Yeah.
Before you know, we'll be running Linux on it. I bet you it'd make a pretty awesome Linux device.
Yeah, you got to power compile it for PowerPC though, right?
It is a PowerPC based chip. Very good, Larry.
And you could plug it into your TV monitor, so you could have as big a screen as you want.
That's right.
Yeah.
And how about the keyboard?
Probably just Bluetooth keyboard.
Bluetooth, yeah. Did
Okay.
the 360 have Bluetooth? I know the
Might have
newer
been
ones
might have
definitely
been
do.
classic. Might have been Bluetooth classic. It
Yeah.
definitely wasn't low energy, but maybe.
You could add a Bluetooth dongle to it, I suppose.
Yep. Well, I mean,
You could use an Xbox controller.
yeah. I mean, how are do they have wireless controllers in 360? God, it's been so long.
I believe it. I believe they did.
I think
I want to say yes.
feels right.
I feel like they did. And
Yeah.
So
I've
wait.
never owned one, so what do I know?
Yeah.
I mean, the Xbox hardware is effectively a hypervisor layer.
Correct.
Yeah.
So does that mean each game's its own VM, or then they run inside another OS?
I think it's just my guess would be, Lee, that they're using the hypervisor to create protected regions of memory for each game and or process to run on.
Makes
Right, it's-
sense.
Typically how hypervisors
Yeah,
implement
yeah, yeah.
security. I'm not an expert on this subject, but like I've run across it and had
Well,
to
I'm
read
just
some
thinking-
stuff, right?
Yeah, well, we all know what what a hypervisor does and how it keeps things separate. And you've got and running VMs and how actually complicated that can be. And then you deliver it in a commercial package that anybody can use. It's like that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. The whole thing is impressive, right?
Yeah,
The fact they kept
and
most people out for 18 years, and this is a device you have physical access to.
right, it's
I think
got
that's pretty
hardware
awesome.
security. It's got on hardware based encryption and all kinds of and they give credit in the article to the standing on the shoulders of the original Xbox with the Xbox 360 and all the things
Right.
they did to make it even more secure. And there was only one hypervisor hack, the King Kong one or something. They
King
said.
Kong, yep.
Like I said, this is Microsoft, right? Our Patch Tuesday friends, they really got this right. It's kind of neat.
Which goes to show you, if Microsoft made an Xbox 360 PC and we were all forced to run their hardware and software, it would be wicked secure.
Wasn't there a
It'd be
a
an iPhone.
supercomputer built on these game
Yes.
consoles?
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, I think
This is
Microsoft would
neat.
call that the Surface line today,
Yeah.
which is a very secure computing platform.
Truth.
Yeah. And my friends who have
iPads and Surface lines are actually pretty impressively good.
Yeah.
Although for a while the Surface lines were plagued with hardware issues.
Yeah, they got that sorted out though.
I think they
Notice
did,
you
didn't
said hardware. Not
Larry's
software.
coming to you like live right now on a Surface Pro.
Is
An
he
older,
really?
an older one, yeah.
Yep.
Even
Hmm.
even the Linux Zealot keeps a Windows computer or two floating around.
Touche.
Mm.
Damn. How old is that Surface, Larry?
Sometimes you need to use the right tool for the right job. It's Paul's Surface, not mine.
It's about 5 years old now.
Really?
It's not bad.
And it's keeping up with the Riverside and
yeah.
everything else?
Keeps up just fine. I
Huh.
get updates to it. I mean, it bugs me to go to Windows 11, but I'm reluctant. But because I don't need it runs fine on Windows 10. I mean, I'm sure at some point it'll be forced, but whatever.
Yeah, well, its end of support is like October 22nd or 24th or something for Windows 10, somewhere in there.
Interesting.
Yeah, like this year.
Mm.
Yeah. It's coming.
Larry, you had one other story on IoT and hardware that I flagged was tracking you from 1,000 miles away, turn a Bluetooth device into an Apple AirTag without root privileges.
Yeah, the en route tag. I will fully admit I didn't get a good opportunity to look at this paper in its entirety. It was released at Usenix. But effectively they're turning just about every piece of device into something that effectively masquerades as an AirTag, which then gets added into the Find My network. So yeah, and apparently there's a fix, and I don't understand how the fix and the things are related.
Dude, you gotta try that.
Because it
I need
says,
to smoke your cocktail
wow,
before you have it.
there's something about
Family show.
iOS 18.2 and so forth, and with bad apps, and so I don't know the entirety of what's going on here.
No worries.
The
We can come
attacker
back.
needs to get you to run their software on your device.
Interesting.
Okay. Your device must have Bluetooth hardware, and it must be turned on. Okay.
Oh, so this was like an academic paper. Yeah, they're tough to unpack and understand.
And well, so this isn't even the paper. This is just the high level.
This is like their GitHub IO page explaining it. Yeah.
Yep.
And then they have a paper and code.
Yep. So I have not read the paper. I've only seen the
description says an address confusion vulnerability in Find My Network allows remote attacker exploits this vulnerability to turn your. That's what it says. I think what it's trying to say is allows a remote attacker to exploit this vulnerability to turn your device, compromise your device, whether it's a desktop, smartphone, into an AirTag-like tracker, enabling the attacker to track your location. Oh, I see what they're saying.
Yeah. Unless you've applied these updates, 18.2, 17.7.3, watchOS 11.2.
I see. So they can turn any desktop, smartphone, or smartwatch into an AirTag and then track you with it.
Right.
So even if you don't have an AirTag on, if you're carrying your phone, they've compromised your phone and access an AirTag link.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, now there's something here too that I'm not grasping as I'm looking at the paper, because there's some unique keys that are involved for identifying the devices. And then they start talking about building a rainbow table.
Ooh.
I'm assuming for the individual private keys, and I don't know. So yeah, I don't know.
Cool. We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
When
Good
we know
summary.
more.
Yeah.
Interesting, but yeah. Well, before we go to threat landscape, I just had one last story that's kind of Linuxy related.
Mhm.
And this is not so much a story, but something that I discovered and started using, and I thought it was really cool. And the project is called Top Grade. So apparently there was an original project called Top Grade that I don't know if it was abandoned or whatnot, and someone picked up the project and started developing it. And so I had like a lot of my own scripts for updating Linux systems. And I have over the years, I mean, going back to my Unix days, and I'm sure many of us that did Unix, for 20 plus years have had your wide range of scripts that you use to update your systems, right? Because you get tired of typing the same commands. There's different components that need to be updated. So like all good administrators, you want to replace yourself with a small shell script. And I was doing that, and I had a script, and I was like, this is actually working pretty good. Like, I'd really love to take this project and do more with it. I'm like, maybe rewrite it in Python and have a really cool framework for updating all the things. But then I clicked my heels 3 times and I searched on the internet and I found Top Grade. I mean, that's a stretch. I actually heard about it on another Linux podcast talk about Top Grade. And I'm like, what is that? I got to check that out.
Mhm.
And the features that I was after or ones I've talked about before, right? Just updating a system is not just updating the operating system. So like on
No.
Linux, it's not just apt, upgrade. It's, are my snap packages up to date? Is my Flatpak up to date? Are my containers up to date? Is my firmware up to date? Did my files change due to a package update? And now I have to merge a couple of configuration files because the package goes, oh, I've got a new osquery.conf file. You have an osquery.conf file. You have to merge these changes together. And so I would tune my script to identify those files for me and kind of go through them and go, oh, actually, I do want to merge that one. Top Grade does all that for you,
Nice.
which is, it's just awesome. So it supports all version of Linux that I've encountered, including Raspberry Pis. However, I did have to update my Raspberry Pi to the latest OS to get it to run.
Irony.
If Top Grade's not in your package repo, you can download the packages, binaries, and source code from the releases page, and the binary will auto update after that, ironically enough.
Nice.
It supports LVFS to update firmware, scans for changes in the files post upgrade, and even updates containers and platform IO. The feature that I just got working and kind of falling in love with is if you give it a list of hosts in the config file for Top Grade, it'll SSH into all those remote systems and run top grade. I had to put top grade on those systems. So I did that. And now if I execute top grade, it'll go to all my systems and update all of my systems in all the different areas, right? Snaps, Flatpak, whatever else needs to be updated. There's a couple more things that I'm forgetting that it actually updates, which is amazing. If you have Clam AV, it'll try and update your Clam AV definitions. It's really awesome. So it boils it down to one command: keep your systems up to date. If also I'd configured Tailscale on the host as well. So like from any one of my inside of my VPN, now I can access all of my systems securely over the VPN and keep them all up to date. So let me know what you think, and if you're using other stuff to update your systems, let me know. But I was impressed with top grade.
Nice.
I still want to kind of code it myself. I was kind of looking forward to that as a project, but then I started using this. I'm like, I really don't have to. Like I could. There's no reason why I shouldn't, for an academic exercise, but I'm like, someone did. Also, it's written in Rust for whatever it's worth. Paul's Security Weekly is supported by Bitwarden, the trusted solution for password, passkey, and secrets management. Bitwarden empowers everyone to create and manage strong and unique credentials across all accounts and devices. With enterprise SSO integration, end-to-end encryption, and secure autofill capabilities, Bitwarden defends against phishing attacks and data breaches. Strengthen your security posture with tools built to protect what matters most. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Bitwarden.
Did you do all this on a laptop or on some smaller device that you cobbled together?
I used various desktops and laptops and smaller devices in this project, Jeff.
Good job.
I blew up one Raspberry Pi, but I had two as like my remote access hosts as a backup. And they tell you not to do major dist upgrades like over the network. Like they say that right in the documentation. I think they even say that right in the command. Like after you actually, they're like, don't do this. When you do it in Ubuntu, it says, hey, you're doing this over SSH. That's not great. I'm going to spin up a separate SSH instance on a different port while this is going on, just in case. So I threw caution in the wind. I did it over SSH, and one of my Raspberry Pis rebooted and didn't come back. I was like, that's fine. I had another one. So having backups is good. And it wasn't doing anything other than just remote access. So yeah, I thought it was great. Have you anyone used this before?
Mm-mm.
Definitely check it out. I'm digging it.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty good. I mean, it sounds almost as good as like, I don't know, Windows Update or something. Pretty cool, man.
Except Windows Update doesn't update your third-party applications, right? Your Windows Update isn't updating your Chrome.
No, you're true. You're absolutely correct. Doesn't do it.
And not all your drivers. Some of your drivers, but not all. Right?
You're right.
In
I
Windows
just had to
Update.
bust on you.
I think I'm being serious. Josh, fuck off. Then secondly, all operating systems need that level of scrutiny, right? To go because the main core OS doesn't update everything, right? Windows arguably is a little better, but I still like UEFI updates don't. Well, if you have a Surface, it does. Right, from Microsoft, because Microsoft controls all the hardware, so they will update UEFI. For other systems, you need separate utilities, and that's manufacturer dependent, which is why LVFS is so awesome, because it's manufacturer independent, although not all manufacturers participate in it. Anyway, let's move on to, what do you say? Threat landscape? Oh, we got to talk about how we're not supposed to hack Russia anymore.
We should talk about that.
So Russia's not a threat anymore. It's all solved. We can move on to something else.
Is that? I mean, that's not what they said. That's what they're implying. Certainly, I'm somewhat confused about what they said, because I'm not sure any of it or some of it wasn't fully official. It was kind of like
suggesting
hearsay.
that we're getting unclear guidance from the government. I think they can lock you up and Gitmo for that.
Well, let's hope we haven't reached that.
But they won't.
I mean,
I'm not including.
Governments
not
have
saying
it.
anything.
Got issues, but let's hope it's not coming down to that. But secondly, there's a big difference between don't collect intelligence about Russia versus don't conduct offensive operations against Russia. However, those, in my opinion, and I've got an article in an additional resource in the show notes to back this up, that I believe that it's not really talked about much, but we gain intelligence because we have offensive operations against our adversaries. So we're compromising adversaries' systems infrastructure. The goal may not be to be disruptive. It may be to collect intelligence, but it's still an offensive operation, right? And
Right,
so
but-
we can't
yeah,
cease all that behavior. Like, we need to lurk in those systems. I know some will say that all the nation states are in each other's systems, and we're kind of in a Cold War situation where anyone can pull the plug at any time and disrupt things, but we don't because we're all in each other's systems. I don't know how true that is, but I do know that offensive operations, Stuxnet is an example of offensive operation with a very specific goal to disrupt a particular activity of Iran, right? To enrich nuclear materials. But also, I believe there are offensive operations that we're just monitoring. I think we gain intelligence by going, I know that they're going, our enemies are going to attack this because, oh, by the way, we were in like their systems and we saw them planning to attack that. That's why chat logs, we talked about Black Basta on the chat log leak, right? On Below the Surface this week for Eclipsium. My coworker who can like read, write, and speak Russian fluently analyzed all of that, right? Provided fantastic intelligence. That's the type of intelligence we get with these offensive operations. But I mean, I could be way off. I don't, I didn't work for NSA. I don't, people that work for the, government agencies aren't going to spill the beans about what goes on in our offensive operations against other countries.
You're right. We're not going to.
Right? Just like I can't, there's shit I still can't say.
Well, but I think you're right. But I mean, the issue is that Russia is no longer a hostile nation. Now our enemy is Canada.
Yeah. So, all right, let's bring it back to that. I disagree with the notion that Russia is like no longer an adversary nation and we should cease any cyber operations with Russia. I mean, we have a plethora of evidence against that. Plethora, right?
Oh, evidence.
A lot, even.
We just know that. I think, I was having conversations with some people and they're like, well, there must be like good reason, so Russia must be okay now. And I'm like,
No,
look, there's not
it's
too many
not.
things where there's not too many like talking points where I will weigh in heavily when it deals with anything that remotely is political. I'm like, this one I'm going to weigh in on. I'm going to tell you right now, this is wrong. Like, there is huge amounts of evidence over long periods of time that they are heavily conducting operations that force us to basically do the same thing, right?
Well, if you're going to use
That's all
evidence.
fake news, Paul.
I know.
Yeah.
Who uses
And they
evidence these
haven't
days?
changed their behaviors.
No, I mean,
Right.
we're in the
Yeah,
post-fact
something's
world. I
changed.
don't think evidence matters anymore.
True.
Well,
Yeah, well,
let's hope it still does. I'm advocating for evidence, Sam.
And let me guess, Salt
Your kind
Typhoon
will
is
be
just
purged.
misunderstood.
Well, I mean, that's China.
Well, I know I switched countries.
Switch countries.
I could have said Cozy Bear is misunderstood, by the way. It's okay.
Yeah, for some reason, nobody ever gets tired of being angry at China.
Yeah.
speaking of which, now I may have a vested interest in it, but I did something today that I thought I'd never would say that I would ever do and enjoyed.
Whoa! Look, we don't kink shame, but there's a limit, okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, this might be one that we can.
You watched the president's address last night?
Nope, it was today. I actually watched folks testifying before the Chinese subcommittee today.
Oh,
And I process-wise, I thought it was pretty fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I maybe didn't agree with all of the things that were being said by all of the individuals, but I thought
Okay.
that the people that were there were very well spoken, and that there were some good ideas.
Was this because you knew someone who was?
I do know someone that was testifying, and
Yep.
they were also testifying about some very interesting things in my mind.
cool.
So we'll leave it at that.
What was can I ask what your sort of thoughts were on the attitude of the governmental figures towards China? adversarial, friendly.
Yes, adversarial.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
At least we're agreed there.
Adversarial. So,
Well,
Well,
of course, we're doing so well with international relations right now.
don't get me started. But, yeah.
Phrasing.
I technically
Josh, we need to
work-
continue the 20-year tradition of talking politics without talking politics.
Right.
So.
I technically
don't-
work for a Canadian company, so I'm a little bit confused right now.
Well, don't worry. Your pay is going to be subject to 25% tariffs.
Tariff.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
This
know.
is technology, by the way. But Dell, if your order for a Dell product wasn't in by 6 a.m. Central Standard Time this morning, you got a 25% tariff on it.
Wow.
What? Because it
Dells
comes
are
from
made in
Canada,
Canada?
or Mexico? Canada or Mexico?
Components are.
Made in Canada?
There's a lot of components that come out
Oh,
of
yeah, okay.
maquiladoras in Mexico.
Well, some of you will be interested in this, but I was out today listening to NPR, and they were saying because of the tariffs, gas prices are going to go up, starting with the Northeast, like
Great.
40 to 50 cents in the next couple of days.
Oh, yay.
So I immediately went to the gas station and
And
filled
filled
up.
your tank.
Yep.
I have also heard something similar, Jeff, too. That when we'll tie this to some computer security stuff.
Mhm.
We'll do critical infrastructure. That there are a number of places in the U.S. that source most of their electricity from Canada.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
That would be
Canada's
the
starting to cut it
entire
off.
Northeast.
Yes, and
Yeah.
the one that I did see today was that your consumers' energy costs are expected to double overnight.
Has no
in
one
New England.
watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
I know, right?
Anyone? Did they raise or lower? Anyone
Anyone.
raised tariffs? Anyone? Was it effective? No, it was not effective.
Anyone?
That's actually a scene from
It
Ferris
is.
Bueller's Day Off.
It totally.
I watched a
Absolutely.
clip of that and I was like, is that really? I didn't fact check it, but I'm like, is that
It is.
that
It's
really
real.
true?
It
Is
is.
that
It's
really
real.
true?
It's
Right?
absolutely-
Thank you for
Remember
reminding me. I'm going
Voodoo
to call tomorrow
economics?
for an oil tank fill up, and I'll go fill up my gas tank, and I will spend lots and lots and lots of money on getting my house ready.
I wonder
wood
if
for the wood stove.
where is that mattress manufactured? Is that going to experience a price hike?
It'll be now what 2,000 plus 25% tariffs, so it'll be
Yes,
22.50.
25.
$2,500. Yeah,
$2,500.
Math is hard.
Math is hard. Math
Math
is
is
hard.
hard.
And the beard drains the thoughts, So
It does. But it lets the intrusive thoughts in.
that's why Sam is the smartest one of us here. Okay.
To sum up, though, we're all in agreement that Russia is still a nation state to worry about from a cybersecurity perspective.
Yep.
Yes.
I
In a
can't agree
politically
with any
correct
such
fashion-
thing.
In a politically
I-
correct fashion, what I can say is that there are ransomware gangs that happen to
Black
be based
Basta.
out of Russia that are still threats to the business infrastructure of the United States. Therefore, whether the government is or not, there are criminal elements in Russia that are.
Absolutely. I mean, the Black Basta chat logs are one concrete example of a Russian ransomware gang and how they conduct operations.
Did you guys cover that
What
last
they
week?
Yes.
We did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did a whole podcast with my coworker Vlad, who analyzed all the chat logs and had deeper insights because Vlad actually, like I said, speaks and reads Russian.
Yep.
So he was able to he didn't have to rely. I mean, he ran it through something to translate it, but also spot checked it and was like, well, that's kind of a slang term, like that didn't translate correctly. And gave all of his insights. And I mean, they're essentially using all the tools and techniques at their disposal, from what's available to 0-day exploits to writing their own exploits to conduct ransomware operations. And they basically look at a target and say, what's the revenue of this company?
Yeah.
Okay, based on that, let's set the ransom. Now we're in ransomware and move on. And I'm not just saying that speculatively. I'm saying that's what they're doing because we read their chat logs. So
Yeah, they're being smart. They're
Yeah.
knowing their target.
And it was very much like if Larry and Paul were to conduct a pen test, we would kind of approach it in a similar manner, right? Like it's whatever we need to do. I mean, there would be restrictions if Larry and I were to do it legitimately, right? But they don't have those restrictions.
Nope.
So 1 million third-party Android devices have a secret backdoor. I did not read this article.
You probably don't need to.
Yeah, I'm not sure what was new because I followed Badbox. Is that what?
Yep, Badbox.
Badbox. I followed Badbox because I wrote the article.
Yep.
And again, some of it was my original work. It was mostly based on others who had analyzed Android TV malware, which was we've talked about before, embedded in Android TV devices and such.
Yep.
Most of the malware, when people talk in this context, is related to Badbox. To my knowledge, and I haven't read this new paper yet, but to my knowledge, we haven't really pinpointed exactly who and exactly how they're able to get the malware pre-installed on these devices. We don't know where in the supply chain it's being introduced, and we don't know by whom.
Yep. So this is technically.
I was hoping they'd have some of those answers.
Yep.
In this paper.
This is Badbox 2.0.
Was this Trend Micro?
Let me see here. The one I'm looking at is a Wired article.
Yeah.
Human security.
Human security.
Yep.
Yeah, Human Security's looked at this before. This is not the first time they've published an article about Badbox. They
Yep.
did the original research. So
New
they had all the knowledge at a certain point in time and have proven that it's still going on, which concerns me.
Yep.
Again,
And
this is the most concerning thing for me about Badbox is we know it's still happening and we don't know how to stop it.
Yeah.
Like it's
the one that I picked up here that was kind of neat was at least 1 million Android-based TV streaming boxes. Yep, we knew about that.
Mhm.
Tablets, I could see that.
sure.
Projectors.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that.
Okay, so
and,
they run Android. Sure.
And in the beginning of the article, from TV streaming boxes to car infotainment systems, I was like, what? Turns out it's the after-sale car infotainment systems. So
Mhm.
if you're thinking something like, AudioVox or whoever, and like the
I've seen those advertised to me. They
the
advertised
no
it like
name.
you would and I've always been tempted to buy one
Yeah.
just to see what it's all about. But like essentially you take your smartphone and you plug it into your car and it initiates Android Auto.
Yeah.
Right? Basically what they make is an Android box, a
With a
small
screen.
device. I don't even think some don't even have a screen on it. You
Yep.
just plug them in and it pops Android Auto up on there and you can interact with it.
Yep. And some of them I've seen are actually like, it's basically like a tablet for your dashboard.
Yeah. Some
They-
have a screen. Yep.
That do all of that. The other one may be in-dash unit, like third party
Mhm.
replacement, like my one of the YouTube folks that I do, Vice Grip Garage.
Yep.
He
Yep.
replaces the stereos in his car with like I'm looking at like the DIN units that are like they're the thickness of a tablet and it's got Bluetooth, and I'm like, and it's like $20 off of Amazon. Like
You watch
Those are
Vice
probably-
Grip Garage as well? Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's hilarious. That guy's
Larry loves that
funny.
channel.
oh my gosh.
I'm going to come out here and drive this car that I just bought and has been sitting for 27 years, 700 miles home, and I've only got 12 hours to fix it and get it
Yep.
home.
And I've got a battery, a pair of spark plugs, and Vice Grips. Yep. And no brakes.
It's hacking.
Yep.
Mhm.
And a transmission that only goes in reverse. Yep. I love that guy.
But
Hey,
it's
so
not- they can leave
basically
the turn
cheap-
indicator on.
Cheap Android devices carry this malware. Most cheap Android devices carry this malware. Like I'm shocked when I buy a cheap Android device if it doesn't have malware of some kind.
I know.
At least some kind of like adware, spyware. Even if it's nothing like too nefarious, like maybe they're making their revenue off of ad clicks, like ad click revenue. It's on there. And I'm not the only one to speculate that that's why it's so cheap, that it's being subsidized by malicious actors or part of that
Subsidized?
subsidy.
But the
Okay,
fix is
they
just
own
to
the
pay
fucking
more.
company. Come on.
Or maybe they own the company. I don't have any evidence of this, Josh,
Look,
right? But
let's back up a step. So you're talking about done devices. This is a complete device. It has a specific purpose. You pay $30 for it on Amazon or whatever. And you're as you said, you're surprised when it doesn't have malware. And Jeff, yeah, I know I stepped on you. I apologize. Give me a minute. You're surprised when it doesn't have malware. And how many damn things have you done? We bought 17 different of these TV tuners and 12 different, movie decoders and 5 different, duck translators or whatever. And they all had malware on them. Okay. And it's like, it's crazy. Now expand that to that Bloomberg branded rice, the grain of rice things from the Bloomberg article a year or two ago. And how many, microchips, the Manchurian microchip scenario, has malware been brought in on? Because look, today, so it's not even a news story yet on your list, I don't think, but they're challenging the CHIPS Act today. I just saw that. So the CHIPS Act is going to get whacked.
So wait, explain to me. I thought the CHIPS Act was the U.S. government giving $50 billion to companies to manufacture chips here in the U.S. Is that?
And they're saying,
Did I get
don't
that
do
right?
it now. Yeah. It's
So, but
52.7
what's
or
people's
something like
issue?
that, yeah.
So, but what's people's issue with that?
Well, what's wrong with you? Don't you understand Russia's no longer our enemy, so therefore what's the big deal?
So, what are you saying, that we're going to give money to Russia
We
to
don't
build
need
chips
to
here in the
spend
US?
all that money to buy chips here because the ones that are out there are perfectly fine.
Fine. It's a savings.
Why
They're gonna be
spend
able to-
more
they're-
money to
This
build
is
our
money that
own
hasn't
chips?
actually been fully spent yet, so they can whack this and claim a $30 billion savings or whatever. But I don't know how much is spent or not.
So the
I don't
issue
know.
is who we give the money to manufacture chips here.
Yes. So they're
Gotcha,
not.
okay.
They're challenging the CHIPS Act right now, which means that we're still going to be importing a significant chunk of our chips from China, which is the 25% tariff from Dell as of this morning or whatever. Which means that if those chips are if the devices that you pick up on eBay and Amazon or whatever else are representative of manufacturing in foreign countries of microprocessors for this country, I would be surprised by your words, sir, if none of them, if any of them didn't have malware. Okay. And if that's the case, how do we lessen and destroy that impact? Hopefully get rid of that impact of all the malware. How do we reduce the amount of malware coming in? What do we do now?
Well,
in
the answer
software-
to that's easy. We provide our own software.
Right.
You can
But,
manufacture
yeah.
the chip all day long, but the chips hardware is just a paperweight until we enable it with some type of firmware or software.
Yep.
Right, because so
agreed.
many companies are going to do their own firmware. I couldn't
Well,
agree
no,
more.
but that's where the line is going to be, and where I've personally seen issues is in the supply chain. If you're relying on other countries such as China to provide that firmware, there's a supply chain within that supply chain, and by the time you get it, it has all the backdoors and vulnerabilities that everyone wanted to build in.
the
because
malware sub
you didn't-
supply chain.
You didn't want to write the web server for your, Cisco Netgear router, whatever router it is. You outsourced that to Taiwan, and so you got whatever software they were building, which comes complete with the backdoors. It was D-Link. It was Joel's backdoor. That
whatever
I
it is.
traced. We traced it back. I mean, I didn't do it personally, but like other people traced it back. I did some research on it. And I was like, yeah, this software was written by a Taiwanese-based company and had this backdoor in it, right?
So-
and those in software, that's an easier thing to deal with. The hardware backdoors that I'm concerned about is changes to the hardware.
Right.
Like they're trying to hide
Management-
extra hardware.
Management
right,
plane
inside the
interfaces
device.
that
Yeah.
are hidden in a device. And Eclipsium has done a lot of work on that, and Finite State has done some work on that. And there's new initiatives coming out to start working on things like effectively similar to SBOMs, hardware bill of materials type stuff. There's all kinds of things happening to work on this, but until we get American manufactured chips or some way of guaranteeing in some form or fashion that the hardware I'm buying isn't already pre-pwned, we got problems, people.
But
it's a matter of checking.
But Josh, we
You have to
will
check.
have U.S. manufactured chips because TSMC is opening their chip fab in Phoenix this year.
And
And I think Trump said it last night that there's large companies that are doing chip manufacture or agreed to open up plants and do chip manufacturing here. in the US.
TSMC is one of those companies, but do you
Yep.
know what TSMC is long for, right?
Sorry?
Is it the Taiwanese?
Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company.
That's the
Yeah.
largest semiconductor manufacturer in the world, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
So in Richmond, Virginia, in this country, there is a huge frigging building. It's like a couple of million square feet that was designed from the ground up as a chip fab. And they built this out. It has a cafeteria for 3,000 people for all the workers that were there. It has monstrous rooms. It has like 2 freaking substations, literally 2 electrical substations in its backyard. Backyard, you know what I mean? So it has 2 power grids powering the sucker.
All right.
And they never made a single chip there because by the time they built it, it was cheaper to buy the chips from China and Taiwan and everywhere else. And so it's now one of the largest data centers in the area because they converted all these rooms into data centers.
But that's my concern is that what if American-made chips are more expensive than Chinese-made chips? Like I'm just
Then they're going to have to
basic,
subsidize them.
this is just basic common sense, right? Because I'm not an expert, but here's my.
Why are you bringing common sense into this discussion?
This is common sense and a little bit of speculation, Jeff.
Ding,
I'm sorry
ding,
to bring
good
common
job.
sense into
Good
it.
job.
All you have to do is put a tariff on the Chinese chips, and then the American chips will be cheaper.
We established
we just
Ferris
did that.
Bueller. Ferris
smacked it.
Bueller says that doesn't work. Okay,
Yeah, but
Now,
Ferris
but
Bueller
moving
is
on,
not
though.
the president.
but maybe should be. But so where I'm going is it's cheaper to manufacture chips in China because of two reasons. The workers don't get paid as much.
Yep.
And they don't have a lot of overhead due to environmental concerns. If you bring that chip manufacturing here to the US, we have different ways of doing things here in the US that are environmentally more costly and our workers get paid more than an average Chinese worker. Now, again, I'm just pulling this stuff out of my butt. This is just common sense. You can fact check me and whatnot, but I'm pretty sure that's the way it works.
Go ahead.
Right?
Well, the obvious solution is to end environmental regulation and worker protection here.
Well,
We got a
or
guy that can do that.
You, Sam, I hate you so much.
Go ahead,
Don't
Lee.
give them ideas, okay?
They've already got those
No,
ideas.
they've already thought of it.
I know.
Come on.
Go ahead, Lee.
the other way we could do it is we could subsidize it, just like
Yes.
other industries are subsidized.
Yep.
I'm not a fan of subsidies, but it is a way to get an advantage and cut the
So
costs.
wait,
of
so
consumer
the
down.
government pays companies to offset that cost
was the CHIPS
of
Act.
Oh.
environmental.
Yeah, that was the CHIPS Act.
And so
was
the
the
CHIPS
CHIPS
Act had
Act.
that subsidy was to bring it here, to give money to those companies to do it here, so that the end result is the chips are the same price from the U.S. as they are from China.
So you built your
And
factory for
a
free.
guaranteed market because the DoD and other similar
Sure.
governmental agencies would fall all over themselves to buy from U.S. companies. It's
Hey,
just that
I want to
simple.
buy my PCBs and single board computers from U.S. manufacturers.
Absolutely.
If it costs me a little more, that's fine for two reasons. One, a little more confidence that they're not going to be backdoored,
right,
right?
and
Not a
fast.
little more, and it's faster shipping. That's what it comes. That's what it comes
Most of the
down.
time.
to.
So if you really are interested in and want to dig into all of this type of stuff, I would highly recommend going and reading Chip War by Chris Miller.
Oh, it's a
Oh.
great book. Yeah.
I am finishing up now. I've got an hour and a half left in the audiobook, and it's been fascinating. Like talks about the entire history of where all this chip fab design manufacturing all the way back from into the 1960s and pushed into Japan and why it was pushed into Japan and all this type of stuff. So
Yeah. No, it's fantastic stuff, and it's interesting. It's useful. And by the way, as an aside, I have this mild obsession to the YouTube videos of the people in India and China doing the work, like rehabbing batteries out of trucks and things like that. And it's really cool watching them use these primitive tools to do some amazingly sophisticated stuff. And then you realize they're hammering like 20-ton ingots of red hot iron. And there's guys with like no gloves, no safety goggles, no hard hats,
no shoes.
no shoes, standing around and doing this. And you're like, that wouldn't fly here.
Mm.
That just wouldn't. Well, except
Yet.
that OSHA's now going away. So
Yet.
it'll fly soon.
Well, I mean, we had this. We talked about it years ago, and I forget which. I was listening to a podcast. It might have been Joe Rogan, and they were talking about the Apple problem, where there's a boardroom meeting, right, in Apple, and they're like, most of our iPhones, all of them, are made in manufacturing plants in China, where the working conditions are so poor, they're jumping out of the windows to their death.
Yep. Remember these.
And
That's
The
only
suicide
part
nets.
of the problem.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
the suicide nets, right?
Yep.
And the board takes sanction in. Well, we've they've installed nets to catch the people when they jump out.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's certainly telling. I think also willing to absorb some costs to avoid those kind of issues. But it's not me you have to convince; it's the companies themselves, right? Because now their profit margins are gonna shrink unless the government subsidizes it.
And now there's a tariff on nets.
Well, that's if we want to get a net from Canada, Mexico, or China, Jeff, and bring it in here. Now, from China, it's 10%. Canada and Mexico is 25%.
Hey, just for the record, to give credit where credit's due, the Ferris Bueller scene, that's Ben Stein that's giving
Yes,
us
it
It
the
is Ben
economics
Stein. Yep.
lesson.
Yep.
Wanna
Who is
make
a
sure-
brilliant
He was, and
political
who was also
scientist.
fantastic in that. I mean, it was a very small role he played in that movie, but how old is that movie? And it's still memorable, to us today,
got to be almost 40 years old, I would think.
right?
Oh,
Mid
God.
80s.
Is it
Um,
really?
Yeah.
Hackers is 30 years old this year.
Jesus, no.
Did those
And,
movies
and
come out
still
around the
doesn't
same-
hold a candle to sneakers.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off was released in 1986.
86. Which, if you think about it, because I've been watching these movies with my granddaughter, tell me that the character in Ferris Bueller is not exactly the same character in War Games.
Yes.
The
I've
Matthew
seen some
Broderick
videos
character.
that have pointed that out, Jeff. Yes, I agree.
Well, others figured it out way before me. I was rewatching the movies in the last couple
I think
months.
there's
I'm like,
Wanted
wait
a car, I got a computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's actually like lines that people have. Yeah, there's content in both movies that point to that.
Yep.
Anyway, Jeff, the hidden cost of compliance when regulations weaken security.
Yeah.
Just
very
the title alone is compelling.
dubious. It's
intended to
compelling.
Trigger Jeff.
And
It
I
begs
wanted
questions,
I
discussion.
wanted to be triggered, but then it ended up being very light on any kind of details. Like they didn't
Sure.
say what
Sometimes the
happens.
title is the best part of the article. In 20 years of covering this stuff, I can totally tell you I've been sucked in by titles. I'm like, that
Yep.
sounds amazing. Then I'm like, wow, the title was the best part of that article.
Yeah, I mean, and I put that up there, and I didn't get to be on the air last week for personal issues, but so I didn't get to contribute. Assuming you talked a little bit about Zero Trust World, but there was maybe, I don't know, what would you say, guys? Maybe 20 vendors there, so it was rather small. And of course, my first question was, why would a bunch of vendors be at a
vendor show?
At a vendor show? Or they must be partners, more or less. They actually had one vendor there that was competition, but there was one vendor there in the corner, kind of near where our studio box was set up, Cone of Silence, that they were advertising services, and on their banner in bold letters they had compliance. So I, me being me, I went over, was like, tell me about
Jeff made a beeline. Tell me
compliance.
about compliance.
and the young man started talking about, well, all the things that they can do as consultants and advisors to align you with compliance and all the different aspects of it. And then I said, well, isn't that security? And he's like, oh, no, security is different. And he actually described to me that compliance is a much higher bar than security from his viewpoint, because compliance actually has things that you have to meet, thresholds, and there's actually specifics. Whereas he was like, security, what's that? Anything goes. Nobody can define it or knows what it is. And I'm like, I thought about that, and I actually came back the second day and I was like, I loved your opinion, I agree with you, but we're probably the only two people in the world that think this way. But
That's
it was
actually interesting.
No, there's something that I'm digging that.
Well,
Yeah.
good. I'm glad, because after 10 years, it's sinking in that compliance is a measurement.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of people think compliance is pass-fail, and a lot of frameworks are indeed pass-fail. There
Just
are
PCI.
frameworks that are not pass-fail. They are measure where you are and measure where you want to be, like cybersecurity framework from NIST. And so it's not pass-fail. It's a range, a guide. But security, like password complexity, if you had no compliance framework to measure against, what is secure for password complexity while still remaining usable for your users?
It relies on like your own willpower versus someone holding you to a standard. I mean, it's almost like a health
and
thing,
and
right?
that one's
Like,
a little bit more, I think, cut and dry, which maybe that's why I used it as an example. But a secure hardening guide, a lockdown standard for an operating system. What counts as sufficient?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm wondering if I just kind of really quickly skimmed through this guy's points. I'm wondering if he's talking about regulations or if he's talking about like executive orders or other directives that are unfunded. Maybe the right term I'm looking for is unfunded mandates, where folks are expected to suck it up and change their security project without funding to do it even close to right. You're going to get a lot more like a check the box than a real actual implementation. And you've also removed a lot of the analysis and risk-based approach from, which is really what you need. I mean, you have to have
Harding guidelines are like a serving suggestion on a food package, right? It doesn't really hold much weight, right?
That's awesome.
Hardening guides are
20
great.
years ago or even 10 years ago, they were much more important. But Microsoft, to its credit, has done a much better job of building security out of the box. But in the early days, if you recall, everything was turned on and enabled, and it was quite tedious to have to go through a lockdown procedure.
It's gotten better. It's still a thing, Jeff.
Still a thing, but everybody's going to the cloud and they're using the I don't know what the different.
Yeah, but you can't accept the defaults in the cloud either.
You can't.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Many people do.
I still think there's room. Yeah, I still think there's room for improvement.
A buddy of mine was the head of the storage team for AWS, and like he celebrated. The team literally celebrated when they got AWS to accept that by default storage buckets, S3 buckets, should be encrypted. Do you know when that happened?
Yeah, just
after
in the last
so
year.
many people's S3 buckets were leaked
last year.
It was like 8 months ago.
Yeah, I mean it's less than a year ago.
They've slowly been cranking the knob on the S3 bucket thing because so many, much like the C programming language, most people are like, "Oh, I know what I'm doing is totally fine," and they don't. And bad things happen, right? So they had to, by default, right, the equivalent of converting to Rust, put those safeguards in place.
Okay, so how many companies want to do proper security? Rough guess?
0.
Okay, so Jeff is extremely optimistic. Says 0 for those of you that can't see him.
I mean, define want to. Would do it because it's the right thing to do, just because altruism,
or because a framework forces them to, and that's what a framework is.
That's a big difference.
A framework is the lowest common denominator. Would you agree with me, Jeff?
So far, go ahead.
Okay, a framework is the lowest common denominator. If you're forced to do it, and the framework is what is forcing you to do it, whether it's PCI or CMMC or whatever, you do it just to check the box. You do it just enough to check the box. If that is your entire raison d'etre for doing security, you're going to do just enough to check the box. How many companies?
Excuse me, Josh, but English is the official language of the United States. So what the hell did you just say?
I said something that is a French
phrase.
Raisin
dates or something. What did you say?
Yes, because I love sweet dried fruits.
Okay.
Hey, he's raisin awareness. Okay.
Debt's you heard it here first on this date.
Enough of this virtual signaling.
You can play with my raisins.
I think you heard it through the grapevine.
It's just peachy.
So, oh god. So, if you're forced to by a framework, it's the lowest common denominator.
Okay.
If you're a company that actually gives a shit, you're going to do more than that. Okay,
but I think that's it. But that's to me, Josh. That's industry specific. In other words,
what do you mean?
When we interviewed the security lead for Kraken, the cryptocurrency exchange,
Nick,
he was like, Nick, yeah, he was like, dude,
yep.
Everyone's job is security. Like that's like the first item in everyone's job description is you will apply security, right?
Yes, but Nick is also awesome.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Nick
might
is
be
awesome.
But what you're saying is some of that is culture, which I agree with as well.
Yes.
So I think there's a lot of things. Your question about like is do companies have to care about security or how do they care about security is very overloaded because it's depends on who's working there. It depends on the vertical that they are. I get it. Like in general, most companies have this relationship with security that's like, all right, tell me the bare minimum I have to do, and that's what I'll do based on regulations and compliance.
Right. And that's
right?
not.
Jeff, you live that, right?
I do live it, and it's not the framework itself. and of course I'm most familiar with PCI, it's the way it's approached. It's sort of the attitude of the organizations, and there's certainly
the
a lot
culture.
of the culture. And there's tons of companies that are, what's the bare minimum, and the game now is, how do I make this go away? And the answer is stop storing credit card information, which ironically is a good thing because it reduces the footprint of all this data that used to be really lucrative to steal.
It's up there, Jeff, on like on my list of things that have made the most impact on security.
Oh yeah. Well,
PCI is one of them.
and it's funny you mentioned that. I have decided this year, as I was trying to figure out what am I going to talk about if I go to a conference this year, and I decided, I'm always backing up PCI, but I don't ever really, I mean, other than on the air here
Back that ass
sometimes. I never really explain it to people. Why is everybody talking about? Why do you always bring up PCI? Why is it? So I do want to back up, and part of that is I found somebody on GitHub has a copy of every Verizon DBER report that's ever been published, because I wanted to go back thinking, 20 years ago when PCI started, credit cards were everywhere. None of them were encrypted, and by everywhere I mean everywhere. And
attackers didn't have to do much else, but
they
just
were
harvest credit cards, right?
Stealing them all over the
that
place.
That was the deal. That was the game.
20 years later, most of that data is not there anymore, and that's probably the biggest benefit. But also the technology for point of sale systems, cash registers, any kind of payment system has finally caught up. And
most moved on.
Most organizations have started using them. So yeah. But I'm like, okay, I want to give a talk on PCI. How can I do that and have a catchy title? And my working title is compliance equals security.
I like
now.
I mean, that's controversial.
That's why I want people to do it.
Because that's cool. That's cool.
Because then I had this conversation with this guy that's like, oh yeah, compliance actually is concrete, where security is just anything goes.
Yeah, right.
And there's certainly a perception, as Josh was articulating, that compliance, and I'm going to speak specifically now to PCI, is bare minimum. And I'm like, anybody that thinks that has never had to go through it, because I've got lots of clients that for years and years and years have struggled to do all the things that they have to do. Now, some of it might seem tedious. And why do we have to do this? Why do we have to keep track that we're actually doing the things we're supposed to be doing on a daily, weekly, hourly, monthly basis? Why do we have to track that? Why do we have to capture all these logs? Why do we have to look at them? There's lots of things that get built into the argument, but the clients that I work with struggle to meet this quote unquote bare minimum. And I would ask anybody that has that idea, what's missing? If PCI is bare minimum, what is it missing? What should it have? And that was that was an easier question to answer before version 4 came along, because they actually kind of shored a lot of things up in version 4. But the best that I can come up with, because I still believe that PCI from an security objective level is pretty comprehensive. The only thing I would say that might be argued is bare minimum is the frequency of certain activities. But even then, PCI is pushed for probably the last 15 years, 12 years, doing things continuously. If you're supposed to be, everybody thinks they need a quarterly scan. No, you should be scanning all the time. Just once a quarter, you should be able to say that you've caught up and closed all the holes and have a passing scan.
Well, that's technical debt, right? You don't want to let your technical debt accumulate. You want to get rid of that little by little, not in huge chunks.
But that is an example, and I'll talk about this for the month of March as many times as I'm on the show, because PCI 4.01 now becomes fully effective April 1st. So all the future dated new requirements that people have known about since the thing dropped in 2022.
Not April 2nd. They're sticking with April 1st.
Well, they don't say April 1st. They say effective after March 31st, because they're weird enough to know that they shouldn't say April 1st. They should have made it April 20th, frankly, in my book. But one of the things that's changing is for vulnerability scans.
Is that 'cause it's 420?
Yeah, that's why I said they should do it
Oh,
on April
okay.
20th. It was
Just
a
checking.
joke, son. It was a flag wave.
It was a marijuana joke. I didn't expect that from you, Jeff. That was
Well,
great.
I'm surrounded by it. I just don't happen to partake. But I'm not ignorant of the culture. Maybe that ignorant. But vulnerability scanning, the requirement is always, even when I was at Tenable, well, first of all, Tenable didn't know that there was such a thing as an internal vulnerability scan. They thought it was all the ASV external scanning. But the internal scan is, essentially make sure you do something, address, resolve the critical and high vulnerabilities, however you define critical and high in your environment. And for years, it's always been any of the mediums and lows and informations. Yeah, you should get around to them eventually, which we all know as hackers, they can sometimes add up to being very devastating. So you really should
they can
deal with them. What PCI has moved to now in 4.01 is you need to come up with a plan on when you're going to have the medium, lows, and informationals resolved. I think that's the word they use. And they don't tell you how often to do it. They say do a risk assessment. They call it a targeted risk analysis, but they say do some homework and you decide and tell us that mediums need to be 180 days, lows and 365, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Just show us that you've done the homework and can back up the numbers. But there's now going to be a requirement that you have to have a plan on paper of how long it takes you to fix all the vulnerabilities, no matter what the level is. That's subtly different, and I would argue maybe that's bare minimum, but to me, it's giving you the latitude to make it as painful as you want to make it, but it's up to you. Just make it based on something that's based on hopefully reality.
Well, internal vulnerabilities need to be addressed. That was one thing that I've always advocated for, and the leaked chat logs from the Russian ransomware gang Black Basta certainly highlighted was that the vulnerability severity didn't matter because a lot of their techniques were gathering credentials, and with those credentials, now those lower severity vulnerabilities that inevitably get ranked lower severity because an attacker requires initial access. Right, but that initial access comes through with credentials that are either bought or password sprayed or brute forced or sniffed off the network or discovered somewhere else on the network, right? To browse all 5 different ways in which attackers get credentials. Now, as an attacker, I have access and I can escalate those privileges and gain deeper access because there's lower severity vulnerabilities that people largely don't pay attention to.
Right.
That was like a I told you so moment. We need to pay attention to all the vulnerabilities. I know it's impossible to fix everything all the time, but we have to do a better job of being more comprehensive based on, if nothing else, than attacker behavior.
Now, the one thing that I'm not clear about as an assessor, when I start looking at companies after April 1st, and they show me their targeted risk analysis that says, and typically
You meant after March 31st.
After March 31st. Criticals and highs, generally the rule of thumb is 30 days because that's the patching requirement to install patches that resolve critical security vulnerabilities within 30 days. Let's say it's 60 days. Let's say it's 90 days. Mediums. I don't know what's a good idea of how long you should wait to fix them. I'm going to have to accept anything as long as they basically show me that they put some thought into something.
Yeah. I'm concerned about the 30, 60, 90-day thing based on observed behavior. Microsoft described the threat actor group Silk Typhoon. It's another typhoon because we didn't have enough typhoons, so we needed another one.
So we got Silk, Flax,
Silk.
Salt,
There's now a
Flax,
pink
Salt.
typhoon, apparently.
We're missing one in there too. There's a lot of typhoons, but in this case, it was in a Avanti 0-day exploit that it truly was a 0-day. Microsoft, from their report, I believe what I read today was they disclosed it to Avanti. As soon as Avanti issued the patch, basically hours later, attackers were looking for it and exploiting it. And so, like, the clock on, it's interesting. It's not every vulnerability, but the clock is the time frame is in the timeline is really, really accelerated for certain vulnerabilities. In other words, if for this particular one, if you had waited 30, 60, 90 days, you'd likely already be compromised
Right.
because the attackers already had the exploit. And it was disclosed to the company and they released a patch, and then a whole bunch more people developed an exploit. So that exploit was out there, and it's
Well,
hard
and
to
I'll tell
say,
you,
like
most of the
do
companies.
do we tell people like, hey, if there was a 0 day, you need to patch right away? Maybe it's hard.
Are all 0 days by definition some sort of minimum threshold of CVSS score? Because face it, that's what people still go by for criticality.
Not
Or
necessarily.
could they be the whole
The true definition
range?
of 0 day is a
fair?
well, I
Didn't we discuss this a couple
we
weeks ago?
discussed this, right? A 0 day vulnerability and a 0 day exploit
Mhm.
are two different things. If it's a 0 day vulnerability, it's I found a vulnerability, the vendor doesn't know about it at
Mhm.
all, right? Therefore, it's a 0 day vulnerability. If I develop an
Right.
exploit for that, now it's a 0 day exploit because it's for a vulnerability that the vendor doesn't know about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a 0 day vulnerability and a 0 day exploit. They could just be really lame.
Well, for sure.
And not
Yeah.
have high
It could just be
CVSS
really
scores, right?
lame.
Right?
Right.
It could
No, I
just
mean-
it could just make us the computer issue a fart sound or something like that.
Yeah, the whole
but
0 day is
I
the
would-
vendors had 0 days to patch it, right? Because
I-
someone else discovered it and hasn't disclosed it.
I mean,
Right.
I'd argue if you can make the computer make a fart sound, that's not a lame exploit because that's probably some sort of remote code execution and probably has a really high CVSS score. So it may be like it may be privilege escalation where you go from no privileges to having privileges. Good God.
Most of my clients, I will say though, when they've encountered critical patches or when critical patches have been released, the vast majority of them, they're like getting it out ASAP. They have to have a limit. Usually it's 7 days, but I don't know any client that I've worked with in the last 20 years that's waited 30 days to install a critical patch.
From my experience where I used to work, 0 day patches once they were out, it was like a 24, 48 hour thing.
Yeah, I mean that's much
But
more
that's
the
where we were-
norm these days.
We were also getting hit by the regulators to give us a count of what wasn't patched yet right away. And so, what I was trying to do and not finding is there are some guidelines out there for patch intervals that I would expect, right, for Jeff when you go to them, where did it come from? That they could spit out a guideline that said, look, I looked at this document, it said these things, and I ingested it, and this is what I did with it. Not that's probably the wrong answer. To have a basis for it, and I said actively exploited. If you look at the KEV catalog, which is active vulnerability exploitation, they give you 21 days typically to either cease using it or address the vulnerability.
Is there still people working there that can update that thing?
Yes,
Hope so.
Yes.
they're both
Yes.
still there.
Okay, cool.
No,
But it's a good. I think it's a good segue into two things. Lee, you had a story about Cisco Small Business,
yeah.
and I had a story about Polar Edge,
Mhm.
which is a malware campaign that one of the initial access vectors is the Cisco Small Business routers.
Right.
Talked about these devices in the past. I think it's super interesting that, I don't know, as an industry, if we're not paying, Cisco isn't paying much attention to it. I think there's a lack of a lot of vendor support for it. Like even, like I'll just be transparent. Like if you're working for a vendor and you're providing cybersecurity solutions and you're like, what products are we going to support? You want ones that are supported by the enterprise, that have wide
Yeah.
adoption. They're being adopted by large enterprises. They can pay for your solution, that have problems at scale, that need your solution to solve those problems.
Yeah.
So when we look at, as an industry, the Cisco Small Business, it says it right in the title. It's for small businesses. And we tend as an industry to go, small business, they don't have a lot of money to spend. We're not going to focus a lot on not only that market vertical, but the products that they're using as well. Cisco itself, a little inside information. I'm like, what's the deal with the small business stuff? They're like, look, no one wants to sell it because the margins are so slim. and the prospective customers don't have a lot of money to spend. So if you're in sales at Cisco, you're likely going, why am I going to sell Cisco small business when I can sell something else that has a much higher margin to a much larger company?
Right.
Why
Yeah.
not?
Cisco-
Why sell 1,000 when I can sell one
Right.
and make a whole lot more money?
I want to make $1
and
million
spend
deal
the rest
rather
of
than
my
a $10,000
days on the
deal.
golf course.
Yeah,
What
for
are
sure.
car prices like?
It's so, but also Cisco itself is not giving it the love that it likely deserves, in that they don't issue patches for end of life devices,
Right.
like at all.
And
And
these
it's
guys all are
interesting
end of
now.
life.
Cisco's not
It's
a
like-
If you look at the
technology
Polar
company
Edge
anymore.
report, right? You look at the Polar Edge report, they targeted these Cisco devices with this CVE. It's like an unauthenticated remote code execution vulnerability in the web interface.
Yeah.
You look at all those devices, you look at that particular CVE and Cisco's advisory for it. You know what Cisco says? We're not issuing a patch for this because these devices are end of life.
Yeah.
But
So
we turn around, active campaigns that are happening today that got the name Polar Edge are exploiting that vulnerability. And that really, it really pisses me off.
To add insult to injuries, these aren't big companies who can throw a cyber staff at it to deal with it. These are little guys that, it's this part-time guy with an SLA of 72 or 100, or longer hours to respond, because that's generally all they need. It's not a win.
Well,
This
you
is
got to
not-
remember something, guys. I mean, I want to call your attention to something. Cisco isn't a technology company, right?
They're not a security company either.
Right. They're a private equity firm.
What? They're a publicly traded company, though, Josh.
They're a private. Okay, so they're a public equity firm, but
That's interesting take.
they're an acquisition machine. Their technology.
Yes. Yeah,
this
I
is my
agree.
opinion,
No, yep. You got a point. Yep.
but they're not a technology firm anymore. They have technology divisions, but their primary mode of business is acquiring companies and then extracting the profit. from
I
them.
have seen evidence to back that statement up, Josh, in that a lot of their hardcore technical people have left to form their own companies. And I've seen that more than once. Ubiquity, I believe, is an example of that. I
Really? I
believe the
didn't know
founder
that.
of Ubiquity used to work for Cisco.
I did
Someone
not know
fact
that.
check me on that.
I think you're right.
Huh.
And there are other high-ranking technical people years ago who got frustrated and left and formed their own. I don't know if it was network startups or cybersecurity startups or both. Someone can also fact check me on that. But I've witnessed that over the years. 100%.
So, but that's my take on it. You can tell me I'm wrong, but
No,
I've seen that.
I'm giving you evidence.
What was the first?
I know we're not big in 2025. We're not big.
Acquired.
We're not big on evidence. We want to be able to say whatever we want, and no one can fact check it. But I'm saying fact check our shit, okay?
Yeah, 'cause
And my opinion that you backs up your statement, Josh, that they're not a technology company any longer by the fact that their senior technical folks have largely left.
gone. Yeah,
Gone.
they're shrinking. Their
I'm not saying
supported
all gone,
device
but
pool.
shrinking.
Yeah. Well, they're shrinking their supported device pool because they can. The faster they can get you end of life, the faster they can sell you the newer.
Sell you
version.
something new.
Right, and the smaller their supported pool of devices is, the less technical staff they need to support them.
And we'll just, we'll add them to the kev, and we'll let threat actors exploit them, and they're just going to brush it under the rug. Like, what? Is
If
no
you
one else
can't
talking
afford-
about this?
if you can't afford the new device, and obviously you're not a customer of ours, and we don't really care about you.
It's
And I'm
so
not saying this is
frustrating, though.
Cisco's official policy, but this is what it seems like from my point of view.
Yeah.
So it's a tough
It's
it's a
sad.
tough one. So,
Yes,
but
it's
you know,
Lee, sorry, you had this story as well.
yes, go for it.
No, I mean, I'm in agreement with you guys. This is not a good situation on Cisco's part or for the small business. But all the
yeah.
small business owner could do is sign up to the free email feed from the Kev so that they can get updates and see if stuff they have shows up there, so they at least have a clue what's going on. Because they're not going to. I mean, how do you get a small business to justify an enterprise product, right?
And how do you feel like swapping out a switch, by the way, which is a huge pain in the butt?
Yeah.
As
Well,
we
yeah,
know.
it's downtime.
We're
You're not
assuming,
gonna
of
have
course,
okay.
they're
These
not
are
in the-
routers and switches. Like,
We're s-
hold
well,
on.
same.
I'll also admit I run Cisco small business gear. In fact,
Mhm.
some of our packets that we're sending to the internet right now are going through Cisco small business switches. Now, what I'm in the process of implementing is disabling all of the management interfaces, so the web interface, Telnet, SSH, whatever it is, and in favor of the project that I want to implement is getting a Raspberry Pi that I can secure and has secure SSH, put my SSH keys on it, right? It's in the VPN. No one else can access it unless you're inside the VPN. And that has USB to serial interfaces into my devices. So I don't want any of that management stuff on the internet. I'm wiping out that attack surface. I know that Cisco's not going to give me an update for that stuff. In fact, even if I wanted an update, I'd probably have to pay for it. I'm like, I don't want to pay you any money. I got these on sale. And by the way, the gear is totally fine. It works totally fine.
But you're taking extra effort to secure it in order to
but
make
most
sure
small
that you
businesses won't. If you're a small business, right,
well,
you're probably not implementing the Raspberry Pi with all that stuff.
If you dig through the Cisco advisory, there is a thing in there about setting up ACLs on those interfaces so that only certain devices get to them. You're taking a next step. You're not even limiting it to, say, a Bastion host. You're actually eliminating
cutting
a
off
network
the web
path to management.
Yeah, I want to cut them off entirely from the
network.
network.
A hardwire.
Protecting yourself like that is important. And actually, Lee has a story about protecting yourself.
Because also, if you're a small business, you probably don't have 1,000 or 10,000 Cisco small business devices deployed, right? You probably have a handful. Right. If you're the size of an enterprise or not a small business anymore, you're at Cisco's enterprise gear, right?
Yeah.
You're running the Catalyst or whatever, NXOS, whatever, Nexus switches or whatever, right? Which different ball game now. But if you're in the small business, you likely have a limited number of them. Therefore, you can secure them with like Paul's hacks, right?
Yeah.
Paul's hacks are in play now because you don't have 10,000 devices, you have a handful.
Hey, before we go, Lee's got one last story he wants to.
I have one last story. I want to keep it short, and that is to quick context. Shelley and I put together a presentation for the local senior center about how to be safer online. We ran across a campaign from the Social Security Administration called Slam the Scam. Slam the Scam Day is tomorrow, the 6th of March. And it is guidance. It is the same stuff you or I would tell anybody asking how to prevent scams. Social Security has a PDF, ssa.gov/slam. It's actually been out since 2023. I just want to give kudos to the SSA for Social Security Administration for doing something cool and putting it out. And if you're in Social Security and you're on the electronic delivery as opposed to paper, you got an email about it. Like I said, I just think it's nice to see something positive that they're doing, and it's relevant, and it's good stuff.
Kudos.
So just a heartfelt, this is cool.
I think there's a lot of good that can come from folks like us advocating for identification and how to deal with scams, because I think many of us can spot those from a mile away, and teaching others how to spot those from a mile away is how we're all going to get better and reduce fraud, right? In this context, and it's just one level of attack, right? Yeah. But it's important that we continue to communicate with folks on how to deal with these things, because again, we spot them from a mile away. I still come back to the way to deal with scams and fraud is tell people that anything anyone tells you on the internet or over the phone is a lie. Like, just start
including our broadcast. No,
including our broadcast. Absolutely. Fact check our shit. Like, again, fact check our shit. But if you start with what everyone's telling me is a lie, then things get better in terms of dealing with scams. And that's how I deal with it. That's how I advise my friends and family to deal with it. Like, just remember, if someone's telling you something online and you didn't initiate contact or whatever, it's probably a lie. Like, it is a lie.
Or if somebody's asking you for anything.
Right.
Name, address, phone number, social, credit card number. It's a scam.
Have a buddy. If it seems weird, get a friend in there to, call whoever.
Or contact the company. Yeah, contact the company directly. Initiate the communication rather than communication coming to you.
And like I said, and it's sometimes really helpful to have a friend there to do that while you continue to interact with the person until you get told up. All righty.
Any other final stories we wanted to cover? Those are most of the ones I cherry picked, but
I think we're pretty good because
We're good.
we're over time.
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thanks
right.
everyone for listening and watching to this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and